Welcome to this symposium. I think all of you who are present here are making history and are witness to history. You are attending the first annual Cleveland Symposium on International Relations on a very important topic that is not just of historical importance, but also strategic importance. So I am glad that all of you are here on this historic occasion, because looking back, you'll be able to say, yes, I was there, when the first annual Cleveland Symposium on International Relations was organized. It's being primarily organized by the Council for Strategic Affairs, with support from other brotherly organizations that include Case Western Reserve, Youth for Seva, Friends of India Society International, and Indo-American Kashmir Forum. So it's a joint effort, and I laud all the organizations who have banded together to organize this event. You will have approximately 3 hours of very detailed, deliberative, academic discussions. You will see that you have an excellent panel of domain experts that you usually don't see in these kind of symposia. Each person is a specialist in their field, and the idea is to bring the best to the Cleveland community. It was originally scheduled for October 31st for a very symbolic and historical reason. However, all of us know October 31st is what? Halloween. So we decided not to clash it with Halloween. That's why we are doing it today. I have some requests for the audience. Kindly switch off your cell phones or put them on vibration mode. I will be very pleased if you don't talk to people sitting next to you while a speaker is speaking. Please stay calm and cool. Topics can be emotive. Topics can generate passion, but keeping cool is very, very important. There will be a question and answer panel at the end of all the speakers, and you will have opportunity to ask questions. The volunteers and ushers will circulate question cards. So at any point in time you want to ask a question, write your question on the question card. Please write your own name and the speaker's name to whom the question is addressed. During the Q&A panel, all the questions will be taken. We do have some security in the auditorium. We really don't want anybody creating disturbance. You do have opportunity to ask the questions by question cards, so please don't create any disturbance. Security will be available. To my speaker colleagues, I have some instructions, housekeeping instructions. Please be as brief and succinct as possible. We are challenged for time. All of you have been allocated some time. And if you can finish earlier than your allocated time, that's very well and good. There will be a warning bell 5 minutes before your presentation is to end. Then 2 minutes before your presentation is going to end, there will be a final warning bell. I would expect that each speaker finishes at least 1 minute before their allocated time so that we can change the podium or introduce the next speaker. Because of certain considerations, Case Western Reserve University changed the venue last week. And we are very deeply honored that Case is still associated with the symposium, but they had security concerns. Previous venue was not very secure. So there was some difficulty in registration from the prospective participants. There is definitely a limited number of audience or registrants because of change in venue, because people didn't know when to register, where to register. Having said that, there are hundreds and thousands of people who are now connected by live streaming, watching it across this country and across in India. So there is going to be wide circulation. I commend you for coming for this program, and I'll start with my first speaker, and that is Mr. Raj Kaul. Mr. Raj Kaul is the Director for Public Outreach for Indo-American Kashmir Forum. I'm not going to waste too much of time introducing the speaker, because speaker will speak for himself. And you'll have a feast as far as presentation is concerned. Mr. Kaul will cover the history of Jammu and Kashmir and its relationship with India from ancient times to 1947. Mr. Raj Kaul.
Thank you, Adyanji. Thanks for the brief introduction. I just want to thank all of you for being here. I know it's snowing outside, and in this cold weather, you braved out and you're here. So thank you for being here. I also want to recognize the esteemed panel here, and a lot of experience and a lot of respect for all the esteemed panel here. So I won't take time to recognize all of them, but I would straight go into the presentation. So first of all, Indo-American Kashmir Forum. What is Indo-American Kashmir Forum? So in 1990, when the terrorism was at peak in Kashmir, there was no one advocating for Kashmiri Hindus here in United States. And at that point, a group of individuals came together and formed Indo-American Kashmir Forum. The objective was to inform the world about the atrocities and oppression which Kashmiri Hindus had to go through, and then also try for their safe return back to their homes, and where they can practice their beliefs and their spiritual practices freely. So that was the objective. When we think about Kashmir, and a lot of conversation is going on about it's a piece of land. It's a land somewhere in the north of India, and there are two parties competing for that. And let me put the record straight that Kashmir is the crown jewel of India, and Kashmir defines India, and India is Kashmir. And I will provide some content regarding that, and hopefully that will resonate with all of you, and I'll be open and honored to have questions later. When we talk about India as a civilization, it is considered as heart of human civilization. And Kashmir is the soul of that civilization. There have been sages and saints who have lived in Kashmir. They have explored the humanity, the human experience and evolution of humanity. And where are the boundaries? Boundaries go beyond the body intellect, and it goes all the way to universal consciousness. And that is the land of Kashmir. Just quickly, if you look at the map here, at the top is the ancient Kashmir, and at the bottom is the recent map of Kashmir from the government of India. At the top, if you look at how the ancient Kashmir has evolved over the course of time, on the left-hand side, there are rivers flowing all the way, the brown side in the upper map, the rivers flowing from the Himalayan mountains all the way into the Arabian Sea. And that is where the civilization, the Indian civilization, settled. And as it settled over the course of time, the people living on the banks of those rivers evolved into something which is called the Indian civilization. And the Indus, the Harappan civilization, the history is almost 3000 BC, and it has been proved through excavation. In Kashmir itself, there's a place called Burzahama. The Burzahama, we have found the artifacts which are 3000 BC, and there are connections with the Sindh as well. So there was migration or people movement from the Indus to Kashmir. The places of learning in Kashmir, for example, there is Takshashila, Gandhara, Kashmira. And the interesting part is the name Kashmir has not changed. All the way from Mahabharata, which is 3000 BC, the Kashmira, the clan of Kashmir, has been mentioned in Mahabharata. So the relationship, the point I'm trying to make is the relationship between Kashmir and Indianness as India is much deep than the piece of land. Again, as talking about the rivers, and I have my friend here from Gilgit. Now the rivers, all the rivers have been flowing from the Himalayas. The people started settling there. The Indus, the Jhelum, the river where a lot of Kashmiris are settled, also flows into the Indus. A lot of other rivers from Punjab, from other parts of Kashmir, almost 6 rivers flow into Indus, and then Indus flows into Arabian Sea. So it is much more the history and the spiritual significance of that area is much deeper. Now let me talk a bit about how Kashmir as a name, why Kashmir is called Kashmir, what happened, how did the Kashmir came into being. So in Nilmat Purana, there was a sage named Kashyap Rishi. So Kashyap Rishi was instrumental in draining out the water from a big lake, and obviously there was snow melting from the mountains, and there were large bodies of water which were not, people could not inhabit there, they could not settle there. So this sage Rishi was instrumental in draining out the water from one of the large water bodies, and that's how the Kashyap Mer, or Kashyap, based on that name, that's how the Kashmir name was formed. And over the course of time, the name has remained the same. So the relationship is much deeper than what is being in the media right now. The picture you're seeing is a traditional Kashmiri Pandit family, the attire they are wearing. This must be a picture in 1800s. The significance of this picture is, in Kashmir, the Kashmiris were not called Hindus, they were called Bhattas. And Bhattas are scholars. That is the Sanskrit meaning of the word Bhatta. They have contributed to the language of Sanskrit. They are the fountainhead of the language. And you will see in the further slides as I talk about the sages and saints who have contributed to the culture of India. Kashmiri Hindus have been the class of learning. They have been focused on knowledge. They have been focused on as teachers, and they have also contributed in administration as well. The picture you're seeing in front is Dal Lake. It's in the center of Srinagar. The lake and city of Srinagar is, there are multiple lakes there. Even in the valley of Kashmir, there are multiple lakes. The significance of this picture is in the backdrop is Hari Parbat. And Hari Parbat has a temple there, and it's a Sharika temple, and it is the Shakti Peeth, one of the Shakti Peeths. Panini, a very, very interesting personality who was from Kashmir. Panini is considered the father of the linguistics. And he was born right 100 kilometers from Srinagar. And he was born from Swat. And you know what Swat is known for these days. The beauty about Panini is that he was able to, the grammar, the Sanskrit grammar, he was able to code the Sanskrit grammar. So 10,000 pages of paper, of words or paragraphs, he was able to do it in 4,000 verses. And the meter he used, the verses he used, and how he was able to relate those symbols to the sentences of the text. And there's a lot of research going on right now in terms of the programming languages, and that may be one of the reasons why a lot of Indians have that scientific, that mathematical brain, maybe the lineage from Panini. And you see a lot of music instruments. There was a sage named Sharangadev, and he was born in 12th century in Kashmir. And he wrote Sangeet Ratnakar. Sharangadev, and maybe Sarangi is based on that name Sharangadev. And that's why even Afghanistan has a lot of music. If you look at the folk music in Afghanistan or folk music in Kashmir, it is very rich. But what we are seeing right now is an extremist ideology which has destroyed it all. So all these instruments on the western side of Kashmir, in Afghanistan, in Kandahar, which is Kandahar right now, Gandhar, that was very rich in culture and music. And these are all, this is history. This has been written by Kalhan. Kalhan was a historian, chronological. He has written the history of Kashmir, and he wrote Raj Tarangani. Raj Tarangani is the river of kings. That's the name, the meaning of the name of Raj Tarangani. He has written the history, and he has referenced it in Nilmut Purana. Nilmut Purana is a 5th century chronicle where the history of Kashmir has been written as well. So the cultural history is in Raj Tarangani, and the political history, the political history is in Raj Tarangani, and a lot of cultural history is in Nilmut Purana. Another sage from Kashmir is Bharat Muni. Bharat Muni was in 200 BC, if you look at the date 200 BC, he is responsible for the art of performing arts, the dance and performing arts. And the objective for the performing art or the artist was, how do they raise the awareness of the spectator to the universal consciousness? And how does that performer who's performing on the stage, and how does that spectator who's watching that performance becomes one with the divinity? That was the depth and the strength of the philosophy. Another key area where Kashmiris have contributed is yoga. And how many of you, maybe I can get a raise of hands, how many of you do meditation, yoga? Oh, there are some. Okay, good. So you're practicing Kashmir Shaivism, by the way. Any type of meditation, any type of yoga you're doing, there are 112 ways of meditating. So this text called Vijnana Bhairava Tantra was written by Kashmiris. The Vijnana Bhairava Tantra means Vi is different, Gyan is knowledge, Tantra is the technique. Various ways or various techniques to realize your true self, True self can be God, can be universal consciousness. By the way, the Western philosophers are using Kashmir Shaivism. Rupert Spira uses Kashmir Shaivism. Aday Shanti uses Kashmir Shaivism. And Western philosophers have connected. They have understood the value of the Indian heritage and Indian civilization. The yogas, and yoga is, the meaning of yoga is moving from the lower consciousness to the higher consciousness. That is what yoga is. And of course, here these days you see power yoga and all those different yogas. But the reality is that yoga is how a person from the grosser self go to the higher self. It is their own internal journey. And that was known 3,000 years back, 3,000 BC, where the sages and all the saints had explored those areas in Kashmir. Another star, Abhinav Gupta, he was in Kashmir in 10th century AD. And he was a philosopher, he was a musician, he was a writer, mathematician. You can say all, and he was it. And he was a proponent of Kashmir Shaivism as well. Very learned person, respected person, and had disciples. One of his disciples was Kshem Raja. And he wrote recognition, Pratibhigna Hridayam is one of the texts he has written. And it is about recognition of your true self. Irrespective of the denominations of caste, color, religion, the text is so profound that it takes you from the lower self to the higher self. Again, this slide kind of talks about what it means for going from a lower self to a higher self. It's called Trika philosophy, which were the Kashmiri sages came up with the Trika philosophy. It's about the man and being a limited being, and then you see how a man can raise to the universal self. I think I'm getting a notice about the time, so I'll just keep on moving here. This is an important Tirth Stan for all the Kashmiri Hindus, and especially for all the folks who are living in that area. This place was built by, again, there are a lot of stories about this place. This is Sharda Peeth. It's in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. This was the place where Diksha was given, or the graduation was given for all the saints who would be graduating in Sanatan Dharma or Vedanta or Kashmir Shaivism. There were two seats of learning. One was in Varanasi and the second was in Sharda. And it's in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Big heritage, not only for Kashmiri Pandits, but everyone in that area. But what has happened is it has been erased. Such a beautiful place. Look at the location and the backdrop. Buddhism was also in Kashmir. I'll just move faster here. Ashoka the Great established Buddhist thought in Kashmir in 250 BC. This is the entrance to the Sun Temple. There are two Sun Temples in India. One is in Konark, one is in Kashmir. And this is the entrance to the Sun Temple. This was done by Lalita Dattya. And Lalita Dattya was, I don't know how many of you have heard about Lalita Dattya. He was the Alexander of India. His empire was all the way from Turkey to Assam, which is current Assam, and all the way to Orissa, Assam, Turkey. You can imagine the whole belt of Lalita Dattya. This is another, this is a Shiva temple. This is Naranag. It's again another spiritual place in Kashmir. And this shows the Karakota Empire, which is the Lalita Dattya belonged to this Karakota Empire. And it talks about the Magadha, all the way to Turkishahi, Srinagar. All those areas were part of his empire. And we don't learn about this in our history books in India. This is Avanti Varman. This is a place like 15 kilometers from Srinagar, and it's called Avantipur. And he was the king in 1850s. So 850 and between 850 and 900. This was his capital. Again, this is Varhamula, which is called Baramulla right now. It's around 50 kilometers from Srinagar. This was one of, he had moved his capital to this place. The first time the Islam came into Kashmir was in 14th century AD. And it came with a lot of pain, a lot of oppression. There were a lot of killings as a result. And from 14th to 18th century, for almost 400s, Islam was dominant in Kashmir. So there was a lot of people from the cities and from Srinagar ran out to jungles. So a lot of families, you will see the Kashmiri Hindu families, they were living all spread out to into the mountains, into the villages. One of the reasons were they had left the city area. I'll take 1 minute to wrap it up, I'm sorry. Just quickly covering, so between 1400 and 1800 was the Islamic rule in Kashmir. After that, Sikhs came in, and they kind of drove the Afghans out of Kashmir. And then in 1918, from 1819 to 1846, Sikhs ruled. And then from 1846 to 1947 was ruled by Dogra Hindus. And then, of course, in 1947 was the Instrument of Accession, which was signed by Maharaja Hari Singh with India. I won't go into details. I know we have other speakers. I'm sure they're going to cover a little bit more in detail. But what I want to leave you with a couple of things. One is there was a Shaivite saint in Kashmir. Her name is Laleshwari, and she had a verse. Which said, Amipan Sadras, Navichas Laman, Katibozi Daimyon Metidi Tar, Amen Takian Poinzan Shaman, Zuchum Brahman Garagatha. So the meaning of this verse is that as the world, there are two ways to see this verse. As the worldly things are happening, I, as a body, I'm leaving this place, but I want to go to that universal divinity. That is the verse, the meaning of the verse. As from the worldly affairs, I want to go to that universal consciousness. And from a Kashmiri Pandit standpoint, what I am saying is that I am longing for that home, back home to my roots, back home to that Kashmir, which was beautiful, full of love, divinity. And I want to see that multiculturalism, that brotherlyhood, that which we have lost back in Kashmir. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Raj, for such an exquisite description of the glorious history of Jammu and Kashmir. Incidentally, Raj talked about Samrat Lalitaditya. I have to make a personal confession. My son's name is Lalitaditya. I am going to invite my second speaker and my friend, Hira Fotedar. Hira Fotedar is the founder president and past president of Indo-American Kashmiri Forum, and he's going to talk about ethnic cleansing and cultural genocide in Jammu and Kashmir. So I invite Hira.
Thank you, Adityanathji. After such an uplifting talk by Raj, I get to speak about the genocide and ethnic cleansing, very hard act to follow. And again, my greetings to the panel here, and thank you very much for coming. Before I get started, I want to play a little tape. Do I press it?
The middle one, if you press the middle one, it goes.
So you press that.
Who are Kashmiri Pandits? You got a pretty good tutorial on that thing from Raj. So let me summarize. Kashmiri Pandits are the Aborigines of Kashmir. We have a 5,000-year-old history, living history. This year is our 5,095 calendar year in Saptarishi Samvat. And we have a jantri that we follow. All of us take it wherever we go. Kashmiri Hindus are the only people in India that have a recorded history. Nobody else has recorded history that goes to 15, 16, 2,000 years. Raj Tarangni was an example of that. Kashmiri Hindus are also been the worst sufferer of genocide and ethnic cleansing ever since Islam came to Kashmir. We have had 7 major exoduses in Kashmir from 1339 till present. So briefly, Kashmir had Islamic rule from 1339 to 1820. And the first major exodus took place in 1405 when Sikandar Butshikan ordered the destruction of all our temples, our schools of learning, and major Katle-am, persecution of Hindus. 100,000 Hindus were killed, and there is a mass grave near Dal Lake. You saw the picture of Dal Lake? Near Ranawari in Srinagar, it's called Bhatta Mazar. That is the mass grave of Bhattas. It still exists there today. The second exodus took place in the reign of Ali Shah Chak and his dynasty. They were so brutal, they had made the persecution of Kashmiri Hindus as an official royal policy. 900 Hindus used to be killed every day. Third exodus took place under the Mughal rule. Jahangir and Aurangzeb were the worst. They forcefully would abduct Hindu girls and marry them off to Muslim boys. The situation was so bad that during Aurangzeb's reign, Kashmiri Pandits went to talk to Sikh Guru Tegh Bahadur Singh to save us. And he gave his life, and his head and his body is enshrined in Gurdwara Shishganj in Delhi. You can go and see that. The fourth exodus, the most brutal one, was during the Afghan rule from 1750 to 1820. The Hindus had to pay jizya, tax, and they were made to flee out of Kashmir to other parts of India. You have Nehrus and all those guys, they left Kashmir during the Afghan rule. And the women and girls were kidnapped and sold as slaves in the markets of Afghanistan. In 1820, Sikh rulers came in and the Dogra rulers came in, and it was easier for us until 1931. In 1931, the British wanted Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir to cede land in Gilgit and Baltistan to them as part of the great game that was going on between the British and the Soviet Union. And Maharaja refused. So they started getting the local Muslim people against the Maharaja. And obviously when that happens, who's going to be the sufferer? So we were the sufferers. They would pelt stones at us, kill us. So a lot of people left in 1931 in our own living memory. And then in 1947, as you know, the state was invaded by Pakistan, and there was a massive killing of Sikhs and Hindus. Sikhs were particularly targeted because of the war with the Afghans, and they used to be called Balwala Kafir. And thousands of women died, men died in Baramulla, in Muzaffarabad, and other parts where the raiders were there. More recently, in 1986 to present, in 1986, on February 21st, under the leadership of Mufti Muhammad Sayyid and Jamaat Islami, They destroyed 40 Hindu temples, 1,500 houses were looted, 300 Hindu houses were set ablaze. And that thing continued up to 1989 when leading community activists from both Muslim and Hindu communities were targeted. Like, for example, Professor Mushir al-Haq, a very popular Vice Chancellor of Jammu and Kashmir University, was gunned down. And so was Muhammad Gujjar, who was the recipient of Padma Bhushan. He was gunned down, along with many Hindu academics, activists, and doctors. And this was done to sow panic, fear, and helplessness among the people. In 1990, that's the worst thing that happened in 1990 is that 400,000 people were forced to flee Kashmir on the 19th of January, when all mosques throughout the valley played threatening audio tapes. Threatening posters were posted on Hindu houses. Hindus were given 24 hours to leave Kashmir, die or convert to Islam. Hindus hid their female folk in their houses, and the poison was ready for them to take to die. We had done that thing for hundreds of years. We knew what to do. And so I remember the Pakistani raiders were 10 miles from my house, and we were all getting ready to be killed, and whole family started, leaving the home. And the next day, the Indian Army came in, and they drove them out to the line of control eventually. So what is the situation today? That we have become refugees in our own country. We are now spread throughout the world. 1,500 Hindus had been killed, thousands of homes looted, burnt, and illegally occupied. And there was a campaign of threats, warnings to the Hindus living in the valley. And these were the threats they were giving us. If you want to stay in Kashmir, you'll have to say Allahu Akbar. We want Kashmir with the Kashmiri Hindu women, but without their men. Either die, convert, or leave. What do we want here? Rule of Sharia, Nizam-e-Mustafa. And these were the posters they would go and put in our homes in Kashmir, and this is from Allah Tigers. Muslims awake, all infidels vanish, jihad is approaching. This is from J&K Muslim Commando Force that would say that leave Kashmir in 1 month, otherwise danger to life and family. Threats were also published in newspapers. Al-Safa is a very popular newspaper in Urdu, and Hizbul Mujahideen in 1990s posted this thing: the aim of the present struggle is the supremacy of Islam in Kashmir in all walks of life, nothing else. Anyone who puts up any hurdle in our way will be annihilated. And then they did attack not only the Hindus, but also Muslims, secular Muslims, educated Muslims who did not agree with their philosophy. And Kashmiri Pandits responsible for any jurors against the Muslims leave the valley within 2 days. So this created a sense of fear and helplessness among Kashmiri Hindus, and the 400,000 people left within 2-3 days and becoming refugees in their own country. So here is an example. I found this thing from my talk in 1992. So the population ends in 1991. And this is how the genocide and ethnic cleansing of Hindus in Kashmir had been continued even after 1947. We were close to 15% of the population at that time, close to 1 million, 900,000 million. By 1981, we were down to about 500,000. And by 1990, there's hardly right now less than 3,000 Hindus are remaining in the valley. And you may say, why? Why was this decrease even though Jammu and Kashmir was part of India, right? Well, what was going on? Well, Jammu and Kashmir had a special status of Article 370, right? They could do whatever they wanted. The accession was only for defense, communication, and foreign affairs. So I'll give you a personal example. I was in 1959, 16 years old. So I applied for a scholarship for engineering. And the government give you a scholarship to study abroad. In India, the problem was we didn't have any engineering school at that time in the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir. So I go for an interview, and there is a gentleman called Aga Askar. He interviewed me. I will never forget his name. And he looks at me, he says, son, you have a really great academic credentials. You're also very active in debates. You're NCC senior, under officer, blah, blah, blah. But there's only one problem. That problem is that you're a Hindu. I'll tell you, all the jobs, all the scholarships in Kashmir is for Muslims. You're a Hindu, you go to India, you have a whole land there, and you can make a good life there. Here, there is no future. So I go back home, tell my father, and my father tells me, he says, oh, don't worry about it. Aga Askar is well-known Tosfi. In Kashmiri, Tosfi means communal guy, right? And don't worry about it. This has been happening. Just forget it. I said, no, I'm never going to come back here. I'm never going to study here. I'm never going to work in Kashmir. And 30 years later, what happened to them? They were all thrown out, this time violently. So let me give you a timeline for insurgents in Kashmir to get a proper perspective of what's going on in Kashmir. Okay. In 1947, Pakistan tribesmen, led by General Akbar Khan of Pakistan Army, attacked Kashmir. Okay. And I'm not going to go into details. I'm sure my other speakers are going to talk about. So India comes in and drives out the people to the line of control. In 1948, India approaches the United Nations, hey, help us because Pakistan attacked us, ask them to take their forces out. Well, nothing happened of that. In 1965, Pakistan Army attacks India to capture Kashmir because in 1962, India was defeated by Chinese, and we were really very weak. So Pakistan thought, well, this is the time to go and attack India and grab Kashmir. Well, they got beat. Didn't happen. In 1971, Pakistan again attacks India. We were, at that time, economically weak in 1971. And India rose to the occasion, and they basically liberated Pakistan, divided Pakistan into Bangladesh, and they signed the Shimla Agreement. But after that, the Pakistanis continued doing what they had to do. 1988, Al-Qaeda was founded by Osama bin Laden. In 1989, Soviet-Afghan-Taliban war ends with Soviet withdrawal. And Pakistan launches Operation Tupac, which was to give covert support to jihadis in Kashmir. See, what happened in '89 is that because the victory of Taliban over the Soviet Union, there was a sense in Kashmir that we can defeat India too. Because the Islam defeated Soviet Union, we can defeat India here in Kashmir. And so in '89, Hizbul Mujahideen was founded by Pakistan military as an arm of Jamaat Islami. And in '89, also Mufti Muhammad Sayyid was appointed Home Minister, who made sure that all the security apparatus in Kashmir was inoperative. And in 1990, what happens is 400,000 Hindu Pandits are forced to leave in an orgy of rape, murder. And the religious sadism was at its peak. People were killed by hanging, branding with hot irons, lynching, all kinds of nasty things they did to people when they were killing. Now, there is a book by Rajat Mitra of The Infidel Next Door, and this is some of the things that he found out from the stone throwers. Do you know why we did it? Because it would be too much stress to pull the trigger 400,000 times. This is what the killers who are in the prison, he interviewed them. We would have done that at last resort, but it was not necessary. It would have been much simpler if we could have made them run away saying that we are eyeing their women. We used slogans to terrorize them. We knew they would die of heat stroke, illness, and whatnot. And many other things. I don't have time to. These are some of the pictures of the dead bodies of the Hindus. These are just little kids about 2 or 3 years old who were murdered in a camp in Vandahama. And there were deaths due to the heat stroke, snake bites in the refugee camps. Another 2,500 people died. We had destruction of homes and all that thing. But this is my 2 more slides here. So who's responsible for all this thing in Kashmir? In my opinion, it's Ali Shah Jilani, the leader of Hurriyat and Jamaat Islami, and who gave this interview with Asha Khosa on August 25. I have a 3-point target. First, to impose Islamic Nizam in Kashmir. Islam should govern our political thought, socio-economic plans, culture, and the ongoing movement. The creed, socialism, and secularism should not touch our lives. This is what he said. So the present situation in Kashmir is this. This is from the book K-File by Bashir Assad. This was just published in 2019. I recommend that you read it. And so what he's saying is that after the ethnic cleansing of Kashmiri Hindus, the security situation has worsened. The state has been operating as a semi-autonomous Islamic state. Since '89, Operation Tupac by Pakistan has resulted in 40,000 deaths of Kashmiri Muslim boys. And also, they have also suffered. And a lot of it has been because of the infighting between the various factions. You've got Hizbul Mujahideen, you have Jaish-e-Mohammed, you have all kinds of these outfits that are fighting for turf within each other, and Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front. The problem in Kashmir is 4 M's: mullah, mosque, madrasa. Children are taught jihad and hate Hindus. And India, death is celebrated. And then Sunni Muslim families of Gilanis, Bukharis, and Drabis, which are only 3% of the population, control 35% of all the jobs in Kashmir. So how can you help? Write to congressmen, senators, and speak out against the jihad in Kashmir and support recent actions of India to abrogate Article 370 and 35A. Thank you. Stand up against jihad in Kashmir.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Fotedar. History is brutal, history is depressing, but we shall never forget the history, the cries of the people. It's my pleasure to introduce a true son of India, Singh Seren. Singh Seren was born in what is called Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. He runs and heads Institute of Gilgit and Baltistan in Washington, D.C., and it's my pleasure to present Singh Seren.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, honorable panelist, respected guest. It's such an honor to be here among you. I would like to put a very nice, happy face, although I'll be talking a lot of bad things about Pakistan, so I don't know how I'm going to manage that. I'll be talking about how Pakistan has treated Gilgit Baltistan in the last 70 years. Let's start with the first slide. So Gilgit Baltistan is a part of the Union Territory of Ladakh, India, currently in Pakistani occupation, approximately 29,000 square miles. The population is about 1.5 million. It's a controversial figure. It's a strategic area bordering Afghanistan, China, and Pakistan. It used to be part of the northern province of Jammu and Kashmir when Jammu and Kashmir was united. And my city, Skardo, was the winter capital of Ladakh. At that time, Ladakh was a wazarat. Today, it's a union territory. So this is the map of modern India today. That's the Union Territory of Ladakh, and if we superimpose Gilgit-Baltistan cities on it, you can see where Skardo, Chalas, Gilgit, and Hunza are. Today, Gilgit-Baltistan has been divided by Pakistan into 10 districts. What interesting thing that I found from the Ministry of Home Affairs order was that the names that have been used to define the parts of Gilgit-Baltistan for Ladakh are the same that existed in 1947. For instance, Ladakh Wazarat and Gilgit Wazarat and Niyabat and all those. So I think those names have been used, although we've moved forward a little bit from there. Strategic location, we've been on the famous Silk Route for a very long time between China, Central Asia, Iran, India. through Baltistan, through sugar. Silk trade routes happened through Kashmir into rest of India. My grandfather used to go to Badakhshan to buy polo ponies, and then they used to trade them in Himachal and others. So I think it was a very famous route for the people of Gilgit Baltistan at that time. And because of the trade and the military invasions, it also became the melting pot for the different cultures, economies. So today we have like 7 major languages there, many of them connected with Kashmiri, some of them connected with Tibetan, some are connected with Persian, and they all live together. People came from Mongolia, and the Dogras, obviously, the Scythians and the Sogdians, who made up most of North India during that time. You can see at the map the strategic location of Gilgit Baltistan, how it became the crossroad. So if today India has to go to Central Asia, Gilgit Baltistan is the only safe and quickest route. And all the oil and gas in Central Asia, for instance, with 1 billion Indians ready to consume, can happen through Gilgit Baltistan. But right now, that is happening for China. So 1 billion Chinese using Gilgit Baltistan to access mineral resources in the Middle East and the Persian Gulf. The ethnic mix, as I said, we have different ethnic communities that came together from different parts and live together. We used to be a seat of learning for Hinduism for a very long time and Buddhism for a very long time, but 550 years of Hindu rule in the area, and then Buddhism. And my town, Shigar, became a university from where the teachers used to go to Samarkand and Bukhara and teach students there. Today we have Shias and Ismailis and Nurbakshis, Sunnis. So you see a lot of diversity, but the bad thing about diversity is that you cannot really unite them into a nation, right? If you are oppressed by Pakistan and you want to stand up against Pakistan, you cannot find something very common platform, and that's what's happening with us right now. 7, 8 major languages where a person speaking one language doesn't even share a word from the other, completely different languages. So this, there's a give and take in being a diverse society, and it kind of like X's on your unity. Some of the pictures that I can show from our ancient culture, civilization. These are the Buddhist remnants from the Sogdian and Parthian and Tibetan era. Unfortunately, they have not been taken care of, as you can understand pretty well how it goes in Pakistan. So one might be asking, like, what happened? Like in 1947, 1948, our esteemed scholars know how excited Muslims were to have Pakistan for themselves, as if, they have achieved a Jannat, the paradise on earth, right? And today they have stood up against Pakistan. The Baloch have stood up against Pakistan, and the Pashtuns, and also in Gilgit Baltistan and POK. You recently saw in the last 2-3 weeks, we're seeing violent riots in POK where people are getting killed and they're clashing with the Pakistani authorities. So here I want to focus on Gilgit Baltistan, and there are 4 or 5 points that I want to focus on. One is, I would say, the constitutional impasse that exposed Pakistan's stay in Gilgit Baltistan is illegal, and I will expand on that later. And the second problem that the local people see is why Pakistan has given China a free hand in Gilgit Baltistan to abuse local land and resources. The third issue is obviously jihad and Talibanization, because the local people do not really abide by those standards of promotion of culture and Islamization. And then military encroaching on local land and infringing on local freedom of expression, freedom of political activity, and the last one is the Shia killing. Obviously, thousands of Shias have died in Pakistan. Since 1968, I would say about 23,000 Shias have been killed. This has been reported and documented. So what happens in 1947 that Pakistan attacks Kashmir? I don't know how many of you know about Datta Khail and Gulmarg military operations. These operations happened that separated Gilgit Baltistan and POK from rest of India. And Pakistan refuses to withdraw from Gilgit Baltistan despite the fact that the United Nations Security Council 47 asked Pakistan to withdraw within 90 days. And since then, we have been facing an impasse that we are occupied by Pakistan. And then 1949, Pakistan, through a Karachi agreement, separated the POK southern part of districts with Gilgit-Baltistan and took them under direct control. So I see Gilgit as Pakistan's constitutional sinkhole. Sorry about that. The reason why it's a sinkhole because Pakistan has not been able to really define Gilgit-Baltistan its own constitutional and geographical parameters. You know, it is not a province, it is not an autonomous region, it is not part of POK, it is not part of Pakistan. It is ruled by Islamabad, it is abused by Islamabad, it is governed by Islamabad, but without any political rights. So we have no access to Pakistani parliament, we cannot vote during Pakistani elections, we cannot send our representative to Pakistani parliament, we cannot access Pakistani Supreme Court or the High Court, and all of this because we are a disputed area. So Pakistan doesn't have the legal right to govern us, yet it continues to do that. So that's, I think, one of the biggest frustrations for the local people right now. Pakistani Minister for Kashmir, for instance, he says that not only that Gilgit-Baltistan is not part of Pakistan, but the Pakistani parliament has no legal right to discuss it in the parliament. So, you know, these are like the huge impasses. We feel like we're in a straitjacket, you know, nothing good can happen for us. And the second point, as I mentioned, is that China has become the decision maker in Gilgit-Baltistan. China has been abusing our resources. China has been exploiting our minerals. I will show a lot of pictures after this once this slide moves forward. And what China, as the first slide you saw, that China is right next to Pakistan, and then Pakistan provides this linkage to Central Asia, to the Persian Gulf, to Africa, to Indian Ocean, and that's where China is eyeing, you know, its strategic depth is right where it is. And Pakistan, through Gilgit-Baltistan, is going to provide that. So China is building a lot of roads and tunnels and bridges in Gilgit-Baltistan without providing any benefit to the locals. So if you know something about what's happening in Tibet, if you know something about what's happening in Xinjiang, that's exactly the same development model that China is using in Gilgit-Baltistan. They build their bring their own machines, bring their own people, and then take our minerals and our heavy metals and our copper and gold and take it back to Beijing. So basically, local people do not get, you know, much from what China is doing, just like in Xinjiang and Tibet. Strategic aspect, so if you see Gilgit is here, Aksai Chin is there, and now they've built roads where they are circling India's Kashmir and Ladakh from 3 sides. So Gilgit is really important for China to encircle India in that way and disconnect it from Afghanistan and Central Asia, and Afghanistan being India's neighbor and friendly strategic partner. You know, China considers that control over Gilgit very important. China complicates Kashmir issue. Obviously, you know, it strengthens Pakistan. So if Pakistan is unoccupied, as we call it, China's presence in Gilgit-Baltistan enabled Pakistan to stay there longer. And the longer Pakistan allowed China to stay there, China feels that now it has a stake in it, start claiming. So I don't know if you've heard recently that China started claiming Hunza and Baltistan and Ladakh as its own parts. India has a problem with China being right there on the Persian Gulf because 70% of the oil comes from the Gulf. So if China is going to use Gilgit-Baltistan to use Pakistan's naval bases in Ormara and Gwadar and Jiwani, then obviously it's going to hurt India in the long run. Is China's development model good for locals? I mean, it's a very long slide. You can read along with me, so I don't have to read the whole thing. But basically what is happening is that after 1960, 1968 onward till today, if you look at the local per capita income, if you look at how much money has been spent on education, if you look at how much money has been spent on water, clean water, and sanitation, no improvement in local lives. All the jobs are going to the Chinese and the Pakistanis. If you look at, for instance, the trade deficit, 83% balance in China's favor, and China-Pakistan trade is going by bypassing the Gilgit component of it. So for instance, if Xinjiang has 6 partners, trade partners, right? Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Gilgit Baltistan, Gilgit comes at the bottom, even though there's so much traffic going on between Pakistan and China. So you can imagine that most of that traffic is strategic, right? It's military, it's not to benefit the local people. So that is, I think, a really important point that I wanted to make here. Development or marginalization. Most of the development is either in the hands of FWO, which is a Pakistani military engineering body, or the Chinese. They do not hire local people, they bring their own people. So that's another point that I want to make here, that even though they're building huge roads, if you go on Google, you will see amazing highways, like even better than the US highways, but still it has not really been giving jobs to the local people. They are not paying land compensation to the people that take the land from. That's another problem. Since 1947 onward, people have been asking for land compensation for the last 70 years, and there's no way they're going to get land compensation because Army takes the land the way they want it. So this shows how convenient it's going to be for China to cut the distance from 27, 28 days to, let's say, a day and a half or 2 if they come through Gilgit. For all the shipping that they do. And if you see on the east side, all the ship lanes are choking. Shipping ports are getting saturated, so they're looking for new ports, and that's what Pakistan provides through Gilgit. These are the Chinese who are working there on road and some other projects. They bring their own machines, as I said, they work on them. They are involved in local mineral exploration, and they do not share revenue with the local people. It all goes to, this is what, they're building a dam there. I will show a few pictures of how it is going to impact the local areas. For instance, the Jammu Dam, once it's built, all these villages and all these farmlands will go underwater. Why? So Pakistan can create energy and use it in Punjab. This is another dam, Katsura Dam. Almost 70% of Baltistan's population live in this area, and that will be underwater. Huge valleys, and this is again will be connected with the national grid, and Pakistan will be enjoying the benefits of it. So if you have heard anything about Mangla Dam, for instance, it was built in 1960s. Till today, Pakistan has not paid land compensation or royalty to the people in Mirpur in POK. The same model has been used here. So this is agitated local people, and they're rising against it. And what Pakistan is doing, that anybody who talks against China and Pakistan's expansionism has been declared terrorists. For instance, so our chief minister, he went to Beijing and he wanted to talk about the negative aspects of CPEC, for instance. And what they did, they shut him down. So this was mentioned in a Pakistani newspaper that the Gilgit-Baltistan chief minister was asked to cut his speech because he was saying something that might annoy the Chinese. So that's how much censorship is there. The minister says that anybody who talks about CPEC will be treated as a terrorist. So there are hundreds of people in Gilgit-Baltistan right now who have terrorism charges against them. They're not religious terrorists. They're fighting for their land rights, and they've been declared terrorists. These are the people who are clashing with the local. These are some of different, protests against the damming or mineral exploration, against the Jammu Dam. These are people who are asking for land compensation. These are the homes that have been razed. They've been destroyed to build the Jammu Dam. Again, these are the homes that will be destroyed to create a huge security complex for the Chinese. This person, he has become the symbol of resistance in Gilgit-Baltistan. His name is Iftikhar Hussain. He has been given 91 years in jail for talking about land rights. This person has been given, I think, more than 60 years of jail. Hundreds of our activists are in jail right now. Military is doing exactly the same thing. I don't have time, so I'm just going to, move forward fast. They're building huge military complexes to provide security for the Chinese, or provide security for in the name of Kashmir, or in the name of Afghan jihad and other issues. All the urban center has been militarized, which is really, frustrating local people, and they're rising against it. This is a local newspaper saying that PLA, People's Liberation Army of China, will be using some of those military buildings to station their troops there. Hundreds and hundreds of acres have been taken away by military without paying any local compensation to the local people. These are all protests against army grabbing land by the local people, in the name of CPAC, but again, in the name of Kashmir, but again, taken from local without, compensations. And the Shia killing, as I said, 23,000 Shias have been killed in Pakistan in the last 30, 40 years, and most of them have been killed either among the Hazaras in Parchanar and Gilgit Baltistan. So a lot of frustration, a lot of anger against Pakistan because of all these killings. These are some of the protests. It says, "Ye jo dehshat gardi hai, iske piche vardi hai." The military is behind Shia killing. Women, protesting for the Shia missing persons. Thousands of Baloch, Pashtun, as well as Shias are missing today because they protest against Pakistan military. Again, against Shia missing person in Gilgit Baltistan. UN protest. This is a protest in Skurdo. Talibanization has been one of the key products of Pakistan to promote its strategic interests, but it has been an anathema for Gilgit Baltistan because they've used the land of Gilgit Baltistan to train those Taliban. And those Taliban, they work with the Kashmiri jihadis, the terrorists, and they coordinate their efforts, and they attack people in Gilgit Baltistan. For instance, the local leaders are saying, talking about different camps that exist there, and the Pakistani government or the military is not doing anything. This is another camp in Karga, Kashmiri jihadis. This is a camp of Lashkar-e-Taiba in Ghazar district, for instance. So this jihadi culture has destroyed our culture. Talked a lot about how Hinduism has been affected, Sufism has been affected. Our languages, for instance, they are, because we're slowly being turned into Wahhabis. So they're moving us away from our cultural identity linked to our language and land. So they're not letting us, after 70 years, we're still not let read and write our languages in our schools. That is a huge deficit because then it hurt our oral traditions, epics, and slowly our culture erodes, and it just goes away, and then eventually you will see a Wahhabization of the whole area there. This is the last slide before I stop my conversation, and this is the person, Mirza Hassan Khan, who led the Gilgit rebellion against the Dogra Maharaja. And he was interviewed by Saeed Asad in his book on page 16. He said that there's one regret in my life, and he said that I rebelled against the person that I took oath to be loyal to. And if I knew that Pakistan is going to be this inhumane, undemocratic, unethical, and worse society that we live in today, then I would never rebelled against the Dogras. So I think this is a living testimony. And his son is in exile. The other son is in jail. So this is the person who put Gilgit on a platter and gave to Pakistan. They put him in jail for 10 years. His son is in exile. The other son is in jail. Almost, I think, 7 or 8 of his family members have lost their jobs because they talk against Pakistan's oppression. So you can imagine that if this is what Pakistan is doing to them, what they would be doing to other people who have never, collaborated with Pakistan. Conclusion, I think, I believe that, I've always said I'm an Indian citizen. We need to be part of India. And India has a responsibility, and India, under the Prime Minister Modi, is doing a great job. So this is probably, I would have talked more about it if a lot of things had not happened that we see today. So I think India is moving in the right direction, claiming Gilgit Baltistan, eventually integrating us with the rest of the family. I think that's about it. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much indeed, Singh. The untold story of Gilgit Baltistan is being heard, and their grievances shall be addressed. A time will come. You will be part of the family. I have my pleasure to introduce retired General Aditya Zaini, who served as a soldier in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. A lot of allegations have been made that Indian Army is violating human rights. General Zaini has very graciously agreed to give his personal story of service in Jammu and Kashmir in just 5 minutes.
Distinguished members, friends on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, good evening to you, Jai Hind, and an ex-Indian Army officer's salute to you. Well, on an occasion like this and in 5 minutes, I wonder how much I can put across to you, but it looks rather odd for an army man to be amongst such distinguished, learned professors and teachers who know much about Kashmir academically. So here in the 5 minutes that have been given to me, I have no slides, I have no script, I have no pre-prepared agenda either. So what I'm going to highlight is just flag a few important points which are less understood and more often forgotten. Point 1. And I'm saying this out of experience because out of my 40 years of service, at least 1/3 of that I spent in every nook and corner of Kashmir, including setting foot by default into POK. Why have we come to such a situation? Such a great land of Sufis, such a great land of learned rishis, such a great land of such culture and richness, but we have come to such a bad situation. It has been a story of neglect. It has been a tragedy of neglect, and it pains a soldier's heart. Right from 1947 onwards, it has been a nexus of political, bungling, and administrative failure. A nexus and a coterie of the Abdullahs and the Muftis and the Haqqanis and the Naqshbandis and what have you, the names. They overruled everything politically and administratively in their favor, a culture of corruption and commotion. That has brought us to this stage. 1947, point 2. What was the problem? After the instrument of accession, 26th October 1947, when the Indian Army went in, the issue was only one: whether they would like to be with Pakistan or with India. There was never a question of Azadi. Azadi came in when Benazir came in. You remember that famous speech of Benazir in a white salwar kameez with a palla on her head, and she said, Lal Chowk par bacha chilla kar kahega Azadi, Azadi, Azadi. And the palla fell from her head and it became a big issue in Pakistan. That's when Azadi came in. Today there is not even the issue of Azadi. Today there is an issue of making an Islamic jihadi total caliphate in Kashmir. And from what terrorism was there coming in from Pakistan, the infiltration, we have come to a stage where southern Kashmir has got homegrown terrorism. What was Pulwama? It was a homegrown terrorism. What was this boy who became an icon and an idol? Burhanwani. He was a homegrown boy. So there is a paradigm shift from whether to India or Pakistan, through Azadi, and now coming into making a total jihadi caliphate, an Islamic state, a caliphate. Will it survive? No. As a military man, I'm telling you it will not. Because Pakistan may have taken into consideration every single aspect. Pakistan may have taken into consideration the support from the Saudis, the support from the Americans, the support from wherever, what you may. They have forgotten one thing. And that is a strong government on the other side today and an even stronger military, the Indian military. They will never, never, ever have their what is. Pakistan, mind you, ladies and gentlemen, enjoys a beautiful geostrategic position. It's surrounded by so many cultures. The Chinese culture, the Afghan culture, the Persian culture, the Arabian culture, the Indian culture, the old Mohenjo-daro culture. So they are in a great position geographically. But they are in a very, very poor state of economy and a socio-economic structure in the country. It is ruined. And we military men know that we will have to do nothing to Pakistan because Pakistan will implode. It will just get crushed by its own weight of its own sins. So that much was paradigm shift and understanding. Point 3 is that what we have now understood that we have been killing only terrorists. Eliminating only terrorists. 2001, we had 2001 terrorists killed. In 2019-18, we had only 201 terrorists killed. But we have not been killing terrorism. Killing terrorists is a different thing. Killing terrorism is a different thing. This government has understood. And what has built up now, very less talked about, is that it's a hybrid war. It is not just Pakistan, India, India, Pakistan, J&K. Hybrid war includes all aspects. Economic, political, diplomatic, fake currency, terrorism, infiltration, killing, loot, rape, murder, arson, ethnic cleansing, jihad, burn mosques, do this, do that. Everything. The military cannot fight this. The military, this will not be won by military action. It will have to be an all-government approach, an all-government action. And we could not have done this move towards that all-government approach with that stupid 370 sitting in between. So the removal of that 370 is a historic and a very, very landmark happening, which is, I'm sure somebody would be talking about on 370. It should not have come about in the Indian Constitution at all. How it came about is a different matter. But the fact that it has been kicked out of its roots, and 370 was used to, 370B was used to throw out 370 out of the Constitution. Because how can you ever have a state with a separate constituent assembly, a state with a separate constitution, a state with a separate flag? How do you integrate? And that is what is the problem. We could not integrate for the last 70 years, and now with the removal of 370, we should be able to see. There is a small joke I want to crack. Somebody mentioned about Rishi Kashyap. Well, Rishi Kashyap had gone for a bath in that waters of Kashmir, and he put his clothes onto a rock and then went for a dip. And when he came back, he found that his clothes were missing. So somebody said, "Oh, the Pakistanis must have taken it." So the Pakistanis got wild. And they said, "How the hell do you say Pakistanis? We were not even there then." If you were not even there then why is Kashmir yours, I ask today. Another thing, the last point I would like to make it, the way forward, because that's the topic of the day. The way forward has been defined again and again. Kashmiriyat, Insaniyat, Hindustaniyat, I would say, as an Indian. And I bet you, sir, you talked of Gilgit Baltistan. That unfinished agenda of 1947 is only one. And that is not the reoccupation of only POK, but the reoccupation of the whole of Kashmir. It has to be Gilgit Baltistan. It has to be Shaksgam. It has to be that Aksai Chin area. It may be with the Chinese. The only unfinished agenda of 1947, which in 1984 the Indian Parliament has loudly said, we will get back the whole of Kashmir. It's only a matter of time. I'm sure we will win, and we would be able to go and see Sharda Peeth one day. You mentioned about Sharda Peeth. All Hindus are looking forward to go to Sharda Peeth. I have very little time, sir. I wish I could talk much more. Gilgit Baltistan has been a perfidy between the Pakistanis and the British. It was not a doing of the Indians. It was not a result of that ceasefire. It was not going to UN resolution. And even the UN resolution Article 1 very categorically says, Pakistan must vacate the occupied territories. Only then can the things like plebiscite work. So be happy that 370 has been removed. Be happy that we will integrate this state now and look forward to that unfinished agenda, reoccupation of Pakistan and Gilgit Baltistan. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, General Jaini. I wish I had more time, but I don't. It's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Ved Nanda. Actually, Professor Ved Nanda does not need any introduction. He is Distinguished Professor of International Law and former Provost of University of Denver. He is going to talk about human rights, terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. Professor Ved Nanda.
Well, thank you very much, Adityanji. First of all, I need to tell you, I did not bring from Colorado this snow. It happened here. We have had 3 snowfalls in October, and I was hoping to come here to a sunny, beautiful Cleveland, but snow followed me. Also, I want you to know that this is probably one of the most comprehensive discourse on Kashmir. And I want to congratulate you, Adityanji, you and the planning committee, because I have spoken on Kashmir in many forums. Never has there been such a comprehensive discourse, because you have looked at the context, you have looked at the history, you have looked at current issues, and you have taken all of them in stride, and I want to congratulate you for doing that. Before I say anything about terrorism, I simply want you to know that Jammu and Kashmir has some personal relevance to me as well. I was born in Gujranwala. We had a couple places, Lahore and Gujranwala. 15th of August happened, and my mom and I, we were the only ones left in Gujranwala. The rest of the family, realizing what was going to be happening and what was happening at that time, had left for East Punjab. All of a sudden, all around us, homes were burnt, people were being killed, and there was no way that we could go towards Lahore from Gujranwala or to East Punjab. So we took the train, and the rest of it is history, but we were in Jammu, in a refugee camp for several months before walking back to East Punjab. And I was very little, early teens, and that is my reference to Kashmir and Jammu and Kashmir at least in the beginning. On terrorism, I think I'm just going to be saying very few things because it's a fact of life. Those of you who know what terrorism is, let me refresh your memory. And this is, in my words, a very simple way of saying it. And I want to read it. Systematic use or threatened use of violence to intimidate a population, community, or government, and thereby effect political, religious, or ideological change, and that change is for their own interests. Terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir goes back to the recent one, 1947. We have heard about 7, not simply once, but 7 exodus that Kashmiri Hindus had suffered. But I want to go back only to 1947. Maharaja Hari Singh at that time, when he sent a letter to Lord Mountbatten, and that was October 26, 1947. And that was with the instrument of accession. But I want to cite to you what he said. He said, we need protection. Protection against, and I quote it, soldiers in plain clothes and desperados, both with modern weapons, and it's resulting in what he said, wanton destruction of life and property. So that's the beginning in Jammu and Kashmir of terrorism. Now terrorism has taken another form because those in Pakistan who had been working with Pakistani ISI and the government military, those who are working with them on terrorism, what has happened is that now they are also trafficking in drugs. And what is the purpose of terrorism? Purpose at the present time simply is to see that India is destabilized. You have heard about all these wars, and the military is obsessed in Pakistan that India militarily is strong, economically is strong, politically it's a democracy. Around the world it has got its own visibility as a great power to be and moving in that direction. And military feels obsessed with wanting to fight India, wanting to see that it can be nothing else but subjugated in one fashion or other. And so, what is their policy? Terrorism is the one that, according to them, would bleed India with 1,000 cuts. And so, proxy war and effort in order to see, and then what has happened at the present time is that Pakistan has started not simply those terrorist acts in order to confront India, but also with the policy, jihad, Islam, and at the same time terrorist policies. So that's a combination of all that at the present time is happening. Pakistan thought that because a Muslim majority in Kashmir, and here I think you know that usually when people talk about Kashmir region, they simply talk about Muslim majority Kashmir. But as you heard today, Kashmir is not simply Muslim majority Kashmir Valley. It's Jammu. Jammu is Hindu. It's Gilgit. It is Ladakh. Ladakh is Buddhist. So it's not simply one part, but it's many parts. And in those parts, at the present time, 45% of Jammu and Kashmir is with India, 35% with Pakistan, and 20% at the present time, Aksai Chan with China. So that is the composition at the present time. What happened in 1947 was that obviously Hari Singh did not initially make up his mind, but then once he did, and he wanted to join India, at that time Pakistan had felt that Kashmir would simply join Pakistan because Muslim majority population. But at that time, you probably know, in Jammu and Kashmir, they were simply saying at that time, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh Ittihad, Naya Kashmir Zindabad. And the thought simply was that Kashmir, being Sufi, and these people have been together for some time, that they would probably not want to join Pakistan, and that is why the use of force, and that is why terrorism actions began. Because at that time I had several examples here, but I think I'll probably give you only two. And this is Muhammad Maqbool Sherwani. Invaders that were coming asked him, what is the way to Srinagar? And he gave them the wrong, totally wrong kind of track. And in the same, at that time, Indian forces came in. They were on a wrong track. Finally, they found him and they killed him. Another person, Master Abdul Aziz, a tailor, and at that time there were those invaders raping women, and they were looking at a place where they had several women, and they were going to go after them. And this man said, Quran in his hand, stood there, and he said, you have to go over my dead body to touch any woman. Killed him. And there are many examples of that type at that time. And since then, as you heard today, there is no homegrown terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. And you have heard all those slogans, 19th January especially, and I was looking at them. People's League ka ki kya pehchan, Fateh, Azadi aur Islam, Kashmir banega Pakistan. And then Islam hamara maqsad hai, Quran hamara dastur hai, jihad hamara rasta hai. Islam is our objective, Quran is our constitution, jihad is our way of life. And at the present time, what has happened is that Pakistan cannot deny anymore after what happened in Uri, what happened in Pulwama, and these are clear-cut examples of those organizations in Pakistan nurtured by ISI, trained by them, given money by them, and then also given all kinds of facilities in order to see that they could go on, because Pakistani army would use then their own guns in order to see that the possibility of their infiltration becomes a reality. So, Jaish-e-Muhammad, Lashkar-e-Taba, 2611, and so I think at the present time there is absolutely no doubt that Pakistan is the hub of terrorism, and I think if you could call Pakistan a Mecca of jihadi terrorism, it would not be out of place. Pakistan has used terrorism as a national policy, an instrument of national policy, and that is what has been going on for all these years. I must mention a couple things that have happened in the recent past. You probably know that 23 European Parliament members were in India. They went to Jammu and Kashmir. They looked all around. And one clear message that they found was that Pakistani terrorism is responsible at the present time for what's happening in Jammu and Kashmir, that schools cannot function, that places cannot operate. And the reason for that is that anyone who wants to be leading a normal life is killed by those militants. And there are plenty of people, these are Muslims, not even Hindus, and more Muslims have been killed in the last several years than Hindus. And that is the kind of setting in which at the present time terrorism is. I know that I need to touch upon human rights. I teach it, and obviously what the Indian government had to do at the present time was all those things, people detained, internet not available, there is a kind of lockout. And then the point simply is that under human rights, and human rights, you can go back to 1947, and before that, the United Nations and Second World War, and after Second World War, that total brutality that had happened, because of that, the thought simply was that we would like to see that human rights become a part of the international psychology, international functioning, and the United Nations Charter talked about human rights. But human rights at the present time that we see is the one under the prism of Western ideas. Human right means simply that a government must not use excessive force against its own citizens. And that is where today humanitarian intervention, responsibility to protect, all these kind of new ideas have come into being. So thought simply is that human rights, mostly Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, they look at and they pay attention to a government using excessive force. But at the same time, there are some human rights that are non-derogable. And once a country's own life is at stake, there are issues that call for emergency, then human rights do permit human rights norms that you can have some kind of limitations. They are not absolute. And that is what the government of India did at the time of August 8th, because they said that we are going to be using at that present time kind of law and order in order to make sure that all those jihadis who have made their own mark in Jammu and Kashmir and have created kind of setting in which homegrown terrorism is prevalent, that in order to create a setting in which probably normalcy would come out, they had to use that kind of blocking internet and making all those efforts. But I want to remind you that when we talk about human rights and the issue comes of human rights, look at what they call Azad Kashmir. And you heard about Gilgit and Baltistan. So the point simply is that they have not permitted human rights in their own part of Kashmir that they occupy. You probably know that, but I want to remind you that India has allowed the media free access to its J&K territory until now. Pakistan requires, you need to know, foreign journalists to obtain a military-approved no objection certificate. And China has never allowed the international media into its portion of J&K. What at the present time Indian government has done is, and we'll be hearing about 370 after I finish, but the point simply is that with the at present time, change that has taken place is a change under which minorities can be peacefully living in Jammu and Kashmir. It's a change where women have got more rights, LGBT people have more rights, and at the present time, the hope is that in order to suppress this terrorism, I think our general has spoken. I wish I could have given him my time because he was wonderful. But I simply want you to know that at the present time, this terrorism that Pakistan has begun, continuing in the last from 47 on until now. It has reached a stage where at the present time, Indian government had to take these steps in order to make sure that the last 60, 70 years, all that has happened where unfortunately, terrorism festered in Jammu and Kashmir, and nothing had been done. So that negligence is taken care of, and I hope that in the future we'll see India prosper, Jammu and Kashmir prosper, and under Prime Minister Modi, I hope that we can have a great rising India. And I want to say to you that we all need to work toward that end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Vednanda, a distinguished expert on international law, for balancing the concern about human rights with the reality of terrorism. Our next speaker, and he is one of the keynote speakers, is Ambassador Bhishma Agnihotri. He, besides being for 4 years ambassador at large to Government of United States from India, is also a former chancellor of University of Louisiana system, university system for the whole state. And he's also professor of international law there. He will be speaking to us on the legal basis of recent constitutional changes and its impact on US-India relationship. I have an apology for Ambassador. Because of certain technological issues, we'll have to do your lecture in 2 parts, because 6 o'clock we are scheduled for a Zoom conference in which the Government of India Council General will give what is being done by the Government of India to move Jammu and Kashmir forward. So we will take a brief break for your talk and continue after that Zoom conference.
We are a very distinguished set of speakers, very knowledgeable, and they have given so many things to us that I tend to forget what I'm going to say, because so many things they have talked, they could talk much more. Maybe I should... Anyway, let me first say what I think this evening. Everything was going on here, talk, about many things. But before I talk about 370, let me talk about the man who died because of 370, Dr. Shamshad Mukherjee. I had the fortunate occasion when I was in his company. He was about to go to Jammu and Kashmir in 1953, in the beginning of 1953. And we had arranged for a big program for him in Jalandhar. And he came and he spoke. I don't want to get into details, but anyway, I can tell you something that he had promised me as a student leader that he will speak in English, because all the professors in the area were coming to listen. He started talking in Hindi. Then I bent down, I said, please keep your promise. Then he spoke in English. And at this time, the Secretary of Janasangh was Atalji. And he was standing, he was there in the back. And he said after the program, that was one of the best speeches he ever gave. He's talking about, and thereafter, just before he finished his speech, and there was the company of Premnath Dogra, and those people were there also on stage too. And I said that, give us a going away message. Then what did he say? He said, I don't want to miss it. I think you know, एक देश में दो निशान, दो प्रधान, दो विधान नहीं चलेगा, नहीं चलेगा. He said it. And then from Delhi he came to Jalandhar. Jalandhar he went on to, and so it was his message, and that is today's message. 370, after it was abolished, this was a message. His slogan was ratified, that we will not have 2 prime ministers, we will have now 2 presidents, and we will not have 2 nishan and 2 pradhan or anything else. But anyway, when I'm talking about one one leader who was beyond leadership. Let's talk about somebody else too, because it has connection to what I'm going to talk about. It was Swami Vivekananda. Vivekananda. Why he is connected with that? After he went back from USA, the tour, he went to Kashmir. Of course, he went to other places too, but he went to Kashmir. And he spent there 2-3 weeks. 1 week he spent in the Kali's temple. Another week he spent in Kheer Bhavani temple. And he sat there, and his assistant or his person, he said that after the whole thing was over, he said, I wish we could clean up this whole mess of temples which have been destroyed or which have been dilapidated. They're not functional. One day, and the day has come. The government of India now has decided to take care of all the temples in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So I had to say these because I think it's tied up. Because the vibrations coming from those big top people vibrated in the people who are running the show at this time. Because these people, you name one person, Mr. Modi, or you mean all the Modis who have been inspired by a great ideology that we have to have our land as real land. We have not to be afraid. Why we are afraid? Even now we are afraid. I heard few comments made here, afraid. We have to give up fear. There was a problem we had. We were always afraid of somebody. We were all scholars. We did a lot of good things. But all that we talked about. Who's going to there to protect those big documents, big things? Nobody cared for that. We just lived at the mercy of somebody else. They will save us. Dogras will save us. Sikh people will save us. Somebody else will save us. But we had seldom talked. We have talked on occasions, but we have seldom talked about how we can save ourselves. And now onward, I think the message has to be clear. We, of course, depend upon the army, but what army can do? Since 1949, army was always there. What had happened? Now let me talk about 370. Now somebody said here that there was a lot of neglect. I'm sorry, sir, I have to say that. There was no neglect. There was no neglect. It was all designed from 1949 onward that we will destroy everything which is Hindu. Oh, as simple as that. Let's not mess it up with Kashmir or other states. What happened? Our own Prime Minister Nehru, along with Sheikh Abdullah, they conspired all this to make 370 possible. When the 370 issue came up, and they wanted to have it in the Constitution, and there was no from many corners. Even the person who was responsible for the creation of Constitution, Dr. Ambedkar, he said, no, I cannot do that. It is impossible. But let me tell you what happened. Then Pandit Nehru, he went back to Pandit Nehru and said, what should I do? What we should do? Then he said, Pandit Nehru said, go to him again. Go to Dr. Ambedkar again and talk to him about your needs, why you want it. And you know what he said? I want to read what he said. He said to Abdullah, you wish India should protect your border? She should build road in your areas? she should supply you food grains, and Kashmir should get equal status as India, but government of India should have limited powers, and Indian people should have no rights in Kashmir. To give consent to your proposal would be treacherous. These exact words he had said. Against the interests of India, and I am a law minister of India, I will never do that. That's the one who said it. What happened? It came into existence, 370. Who did it? Nobody did it from outside. Our man did it. The Prime Minister of India did it. How he did it? He confessed for him. We want to have it, we want to have it. Then ultimately, of course, there were a lot of chaos. That is not possible. Why should we have this kind of thing for this territory? Then they have some sort of compromise made. Under the compromise, they said, okay, let us have, that is placed as a temporary situation. And the heading was temporary, transitional, and special provision under Part 21 of the Constitution. They mentioned about 371, 372, all the rights. Then again, after all, those people were still smart, who were opposed to what Nehru people wanted. And he said, somebody put in this, notwithstanding, that is Article 373, notwithstanding anything in the foregoing provision of this article, the President may, by public notification, declare that this article shall cease to be operative or shall be operative only, then they have to cover up something with a modification, etc., provided that the recommendation of the Constituent Assembly of the state referred to in Clause 2 shall be necessary before the President issues such a notification. Now, in this case, of course, Government of India was smart. There's no Constitutional Assembly in Jammu and Kashmir, so it was all the powers vested in the Parliament of India, so therefore the Parliament passed the law. Very simple. The matter was finished. But there was nobody from outside who did it. There was a planned thing. It was not, sir, it was not casual thing, it was planned thing. The man knew what he was doing, Sheikh Abdullah, what he was doing. What happened then? Our man died in Kashmir in 1953. It was June. I'm talking about, I hate to even mention names of those big people. When he died, then before 1974, let me see the dates. I want to be sure of the dates. Sheikh Abdullah came to Delhi, and he was nervous because Dr. Mukherjee has passed away in the June of 1953, and there was some turmoil, and he was afraid something may happen in the future. So he was clever, planned. He went to Nehru again, that I want something else for Jammu and Kashmir. Within a year of the death of Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, notice it, he came in the month of May, 54. Just before May, in fact, he came. He wanted to have an arrangement. Now, Nehru knew at that time that it was not possible for him to go to the people again, here and there, and get it done. So what did he do? He went to the President of India. And President of India at that time was Dr. Rajendra Prasad. And I asked him to make this, which is now known as 35A. He was reluctant. They went back and forth. Ultimately, without any discussion, without any presentation, without any constitutional committee meeting, nothing, it was planted in the Constitution, 35A. illegally, total illegality. What happened? Because he wanted all the rights, you know, I mean, I hate to read all these things. Section 30A says, this is, I mean, it's unbelievable. When I read this, even child knows what is going on. That all the rights of Indians are gone. Nobody can buy property, nobody this and that, nothing. Everything is in the hand of those people who run that place. And they say very simply, even it is not consistent with the Constitution of India, it doesn't make any difference. It's stated there. That's 35A. That's why people are shouting about it again and again. Anyway, I don't want to say because I have many things to talk about. And I will cut down my so-called legal things, okay? Because there are a lot of legal things I need to talk about, but I will not, okay? So we know already, some of you already know what it means, 370 and 335A, and how the employment situation for everybody else, immovable property can be acquired by anybody else, if only settlement in the state was not permissible, right to scholarship was not given, all these things were happening. Then it's gone. Let's talk about going away. Now they're gone. Very cleverly done, nicely done, by the Constitution, by 2/3 majority, a majority in the absolute total number, which is more than, there is a provision here, by the way, another provision, even 362A, that provides how the Constitution can be amended. And that says, very simple, if you have 2/3 majority, you can change the Constitution. So what I'm trying to say is the government of India has done a great job. They must have a good lawyer, by the way. I was not there. But anyway, work is done. By the way, if I were there, I could be, I hate to say, I would be somebody to, or make noise?
No, we are going to do Zoom conference. We'll do second part after.
Okay, that's all right. Second part means more part.
I want to first felicitate the organizers, the Council for Strategic Affairs of Cleveland, for organizing this very important seminar or symposium on this very pertinent issue. I have been hearing the very eminent speakers, and I just heard Ambassador Agnihotri. Thank you, sir. I also heard Mr. Senge Serene and other speakers, and I fully support and endorse what has been said. I think what has happened on 5th August has actually changed the narrative as far as India is concerned. Whatever way we may look at it, so far our reaction or our position has been very reactive to an agenda which has been set in the valley by the separatists and Pakistan. But with the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, I think for the first time perhaps in many years, we have seized the initiative, and it is actually now our opportunity and challenge to turn the ground and situation in the Kashmir Valley. So what I will do is I will divide my brief remarks to two parts. One is, of course, what has happened in India and our objectives as far as the former state of Jammu and Kashmir and now the Union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and the Union territory of Ladakh is concerned. And secondly, I would like to dwell upon a little bit on the international aspect of what has happened, because I think this audience and the panelists and us as well, being in the United States, are more concerned about how we manage the situation in the international context and the reaction of the international community, particularly in the United States. Now, many speakers before me, very illustrious and knowledgeable speakers, have gone into great detail about the history of the issue in the former state of Jammu and Kashmir, and why we have reached where we have reached, and what has been the ground reality, the reaction of the approach of the government of India, and the ground reality in terms of fueling separatist tendencies in the valley, and terror and violence. Now, one point which I would like to highlight is that, which is not often covered in the media, is that the Article 370 formed part of the temporary provisions of the Indian Constitution. So a temporary provision which lasted almost 70 years. So I think it is important to note that the government put the Article 370 with some expectations that it would allow a space to the people and the people of Jammu and Kashmir to slowly integrate with the rest of India. Unfortunately, rather than achieving that, the contrary happened, in the sense that it fueled separatism, it fueled tendencies which were not what was envisaged by our constitution makers, those who put the Article 370. And because of many reasons, I don't want to get into the detail, we as a state also did not know how to deal with the situation. And we tried many tactics. We tried carrot and stick approach, but sometimes it worked, sometimes it did not work. And at the end of the day, we had a situation where the valley felt alienated from India, and we also had no much idea about how to go about it, till, as some speaker said, a strong government in India decided to catch the bull by the horn and took the action that it took on August 5th. What we propose to do is to change the narrative in the valley. We want to integrate Kashmir with the rest of India. We want to give the same economic and legal opportunities that are available to the rest of India to the people of Kashmir. And some of these concerns which are there, that the valley will be taken over by people from other regions of India, I think those are totally unfounded. Because if you see India is based on ethnic and linguistic divisions, So Maharashtra has not become Gujarat, or Tamil Nadu has not become dominated by the Malayali people. So I think these are very unfounded. Our people like to be rooted in where they are, and when they move about, that is decided by economic and other criteria, which I think will also play out the way it does in the rest of India, in the Kashmir Valley as well. So I am not too much concerned that the culture of Kashmir will be somehow overwhelmed by other cultures. I think as far as India is concerned, I think we have done rather well in protecting and promoting the culture of Kashmir. Kashmiri food, Kashmiri music, Kashmiri language. It is better protected in Indian Kashmir rather than in the Kashmir which is occupied by Pakistan. I think that's a fact, and I think it's important to highlight it, because the concept of Kashmiriyat was discussed. I think Kashmiriyat is alive in our part of Kashmir, and I think we should make all efforts to encourage it, to improve it, to make it more vibrant. I think that is the answer to the challenge that we face in the valley. There has been some criticism. I will move to my second part. There has been some criticism, particularly in the US and in the political class, that you have imposed, or we have imposed, restrictions on freedom. And particularly, there is great deal of concern on restrictions on the internet. And some Congress men and women have spoken out publicly. The audience is well aware of that. I think here the point to make is that we had this choice between liberty and life. Also, that the situation in Kashmir was not normal. It is not that everything was very peaceful and everything was fine, and suddenly one day the government decided to take away this or impose these restrictions. It was not that. 40,000 people have died in the last 3 decades in Kashmir. And people from other parts of India, our security forces, and those who were minorities, they did not feel safe and secure in the valley. So it's not that, a very good and very peaceful situation was turned around by the abrogation on August 5th. I think this point is important to note, and we need to repeat it again and again, because somehow the feeling I find in the media and also amongst some intellectual class in the West and in the United States is that, as if we are the aggressor, as if the Indian army is the occupation army, and as if the Indian army has gone there to pillage. I think that's not true at all. The Indian army presence is there to protect the lives and property of the Kashmiri people. They are not an occupation army. They are the army which has protected the life of the people. And I think the last 3 months, the death by violence in the valley is the least in several years. I think this point also needs to be highlighted. And also what violence has happened has been what has been perpetrated by the terrorists. There was not a tear shed in the West about the 5 Muslim laborers from West Bengal who were killed mercilessly by the terrorists. It didn't even, find any mention in the media. So I somehow find that, our so-called intellectual class in the West is concerned only about certain developments in the valley which suits their narrative, and they are not at all bothered about what else is happening in the valley. Now, just coming to the second part of what I was proposing to say is the international reaction. Now, what we find in general is that most countries have accepted that the abrogation of Article 370 is within the right of India. There has hardly been any criticism of that. And I think people understand that what we did was constitutional, was as per the law in India. And the law in India will take its own course. I believe some people have challenged it in the Supreme Court, and we will watch and see how what verdict the court gives. But till the time the court comes out with a verdict, I think this is the law, and our administration and other agencies are working accordingly. And on 31st of October, the promulgation came out of declaring Jammu and Kashmir as a union territory and Ladakh as a union territory. The second part, of course, is the reaction to the restrictions that were placed. On that also, I think from a peak in August, I think there has been a diminution. There has been a decline. Initially, when the clampdown was severe, I think the concern was high. But as in how the situation has been normalized, as restrictions are being lifted, as mobile telephony has started, as people are getting about their normal life, I think even there the concerns have dissipated, and only now there are few pockets where we find concern. And I think we are engaging with them. We are engaging with the media. We are engaging with the Congress. We are engaging with the Indian diaspora and other opinion leaders, and we are trying to convey the message that what has been done to protect the lives of the people of Kashmir, and slowly we will change the situation. We are turning it around, and a normal life will ensue in the coming months. So I think a lot of people understand that, and they are appreciative. I was in Ohio till a few hours back. I met with 4 congressmen of your state, and even there, I think we found a lot of understanding and appreciation. I think we need to continue this messaging. What you are doing today is very important, because I think there is a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about the situation in Kashmir. It's not, I think there are worse places in the world where more attention and concern should be placed, particularly in our neighboring country, where there is systematic aggression against minorities, systematic killings and targeting of mosques of the minorities. Senge spoke about the number of Shia Muslims killed in Pakistan, about the plight of the Ahmadiyyas, and also the situation in Afghanistan and in our neighborhood. I think rather than focusing on the grave spots and the grave conflicts that are present in the world and in our region, I think there is some maybe undue or disproportionate focus on the valley. I think, therefore, these kind of exchanges and information dissemination opportunities are very important, where we tell the real picture. One additional point which I want to highlight here is that in Kashmir, any conflict region, the first indicator of conflict is displaced people or refugees. Now, I am not an expert in Kashmir, but there are a lot of experts sitting there. In the valley, there are no refugees. The only refugees from the valley are actually the Pandits who left the valley in the late 1980s and early 1990s. The majority population in Kashmir is living in their homes. They are going about their normal daily lives, and they are going to their offices, going to their shops, and or sitting in the comfort of their homes. There is no refugee or displaced people in Kashmir. So somehow, this thing is also not coming out in the open, that the main indicator when people do analysis of conflict zones, the first indicator are displaced people and refugees. There are no displaced people and refugees in the valley. I think this is and only one who are there are, of course, the Pandits who have moved to other parts of the country, and including Jammu. So I think it is important to bring this point also to the forefront, that the kind of image that is being portrayed outside about the disturbed situation in Kashmir is not really what it is. What was disturbed is the ability of the Indian state to prevail in the valley, and I think that has now been cleared, and once and for all and irrevocably, Indian state will have the full sovereignty over the valley of Kashmir and other parts of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. I think this is what has happened, and this is a move from which we will never back. It may take some time to normalize the situation, but I think it is for the first time ever that India is united, one, and from Kashmir to Kanyakumari and from Kohima to Kutch, only one Indian flag will fly. And I think this is a point we should always remember. And now we need to work on seeing how we normalize the situation, how the people in the valley who are Indians get the same opportunities as other Indians in other parts of India. With these, I end my remarks, and I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity, and I would be happy to take part in other opportunities to convey this message. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Consul General. How many times did Adam bite the apple? Once. I'm going to bite the apple twice. And it's my pleasure to re-invite Ambassador Bhishma Agnihotri to continue with the second very important aspect of his talk, the impact on US-India relationship. I need to say, Ambassador Bhishma Agnihotri is the international president of Friends of India Societies International. So he has experience in molding the US civil society opinions, and he's going to tell us the way forward.
Adityanji is a wonderful moderator. Now, he has very beautifully suggested to me what I say. Okay? I was talking at that time, and of course we shouldn't go back now. I haven't talked too much about the effect of the abolition of these two provisions, but anyway, you all know, we all know, and you should know that too. But of course, it means that all people, Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, scheduled caste, Bhangi, Kumar, whatever they were called there, they are all part of Jammu and Kashmir as citizens, as recipient of all the benefits of a state. Okay. Now, let's talk about now what is the effect of all this. What should be? Now, number one, I think there was some mention made by the Consul General, but I should mention that too. There is a Supreme Court. Our Supreme Court is very busy, okay? You know all that. They have been busy for the long time on Ram Janmabhoomi. Now they're busy on many things. They're also busy on this 370 and 735A. 14 petitions have been filed before the Supreme Court. And Supreme Court has received those, and they have put a date there. And the date is November 14th. They will discuss those petitions. And 9 of them petitions are about the abrogation of these 2 articles. Of course, our communist man, Sitaram Yechuri, is part of CTM, also is part of the petition. But anyway, that will be resolved, I'm sure. I think our government has taken wonderful steps in making good presentation, doing good job in doing what they have done. No problem. Now, where are we now in America? There is some opposition here. And opposition is basically threefold. One is by the people who are running for office, for the presidency, okay? Sanders, Elizabeth, right? I'm just using a little name. Kamala Harris, who is partially Indian, heritage, and Beto, whatever his name is. Beto has taken out of it. So they went to the public, where they addressed the Muslim public, the Muslim people, and there they almost promised them help. At the same time, they condemned India. They condemned this process. Why they did it? Because they were bought. Because the group went to them. Now that's where I come forward now. I will come to that point. Because the group forward, which group? There is a called CAIR, K-A-I-R. And that was established in 1994. What is CAIR? It is Council on American Islamic Relations. 120 congressmen they approve of their doings. They support them. And they have money coming from all over the world. And what they do? They organize. They sit down and talk amongst themselves. What next? How do we stop this? How do we do this? Organized ways. And they have done it. Now, of course, this lady, Omar, right? You know Omar. Her beautiful picture comes within all the places. She's a congresswoman, and she's a good group. 5, 6 people, then now more people, and she is the member of this. And as a member of this and some other members of this, they organize themselves. And that's how they started fight about what is going on in Jammu and Kashmir. They also talked about Assam. Can you believe it? That what is going on in Assam? I don't know what is going on in Assam. He knows it. Because there were some issues involved there because of, wrong people being there, and there are going to be some sort of a check who is there, who is wrongfully there from other places. But they have agenda, and they will not give up, by the way. And they are, as I said, 94 onward they have been doing it. And they have been doing it in organized way. They meet all the legislators, they meet all the congressmen, they meet all the senators, they meet all the persons who are running for the presidency of the country. As soon as one person goes up a little bit, they go to him. Oh, we'll support you. For example, Kamala Harris was not there, she went to them. I'll support you folks. So that's the way it happens. I'm just talking this thing because I'm going to come back to this. What should you do? What should we do? What they are doing, we have to do that too. Now, we cannot just be here talking not too many people. There are 70 people. I thought there were 85 people, but there are 70 people here. We are here, but listening. And we'll go home and stop talking. But we have to organize ourselves in a regular fashion, the way our people here talked with passion, and see what we can do in an organized manner. When I was ambassador for NRIs all over the world. That was my theme, that you have to put yourself together. There are hundreds and thousands of Indian organizations all over the world, especially in America. At least agree on one thing, that we will agree. We will not disagree. What one thing? One thing. One thing means anything which concerns India will be together. Forget about your other brotheries, your other heritage, other things, but at least one thing you must say. Have a committee formed. But anyway, I will talk to Nitinji about that, and I will talk also, I will stop talking too much at that time, but anyway, I'll go back to them. So, but there are some positive activities going on. I mean, not that everything is negative. Kashmiri Pandits have gone, the group, right? They talked to the people, the Capitol Hill people on October 16th, and talked about these issues. But again, it should not be Kashmiri issues by Kashmiris, for Kashmiris. It is our issue. And they should also stop talking about Kashmir, Kashmir all the time. It's our issue. Who are we? That's a problem. We don't know who are we. We are Indians? Okay. No. When I came to America, somebody told me, why you call yourself Indian? You're not Indian. Anyway, that's a separate issue. Only 5 minutes left, and I am very... by the way, one largest Muslim organization, Jamaat Ulama-i-Hind, passed a very good resolution, by the way. That they said that we feel it's our national duty to protect the democratic and human rights of Kashmiri people. I have a lot of things to talk about in going forward about Pakistan. Let's go forward. Let us talk about POK. Let us talk about how we can get it. We may not get it. At least we should try to tell them that we will get it. They are talking about it. Let us have the issue raised. Let us get together and talk to all the people, all the leaders here, all over the country, that look, we'll support you. I tell people, no, there were 55,000 Indians in Houston, and I was advisor to API, the doctors' organization, and I used to tell them, you are 35,000, now there are 70,000 Indians doctors. You can buy America. You can almost buy America if you put some money on the table. You can buy these politicians if you just organize and go to them and say that's what we want. But that's the problem. We don't ask for anything. We are always defensive. We just respond. We say this is not right, this is wrong. Even talking here, we are defensive. We should not be defensive. We have India. India was given to us in partition, the land we have. Why we were given this partition land? Because we were not what they were. Let us be sure about that. That we were given this because we had a particular heritage, and they had a particular other heritage. We are not against anybody. That's why we are what we are. But we have to show that we have to keep on doing it. There are a lot of other things I can talk about. What about Trump? People want to hear about that? No. This is over. But if you want to talk about it, I will talk about Trump. What should you do with Trump? 1 minute? Okay, 1 minute. What do you do about Trump? My wife doesn't like Trump. She's very much against him. And I said, why are you against him? I am for him. Because he's for India. I'm for him. I don't care what he does, other things. We have to give it very clear indication to everybody. That's my feeling. That's not my wife's feeling, Ani.
No, but you should care for it.
Okay. I don't care for, no, she understands me very well, okay? Don't worry about that. But I'm just talking about this, that we have to be sure that where our interest, India's interest lies, okay? And work on that. We have two ladies who are India ladies, congressmen, women, whatever their names are. They are worse than in American ladies. I forgot their names. I will give the names, they are here. So, but what I'm trying to say is we can not trust anybody else except ourselves, and let us stick together.
So, guys, the distinguished panel has spoken. There's not much for me to say. I'll keep it short, but I won't confine it to Jammu and Kashmir. I look at the big picture. I look at the trends, and I'll give some of my personal opinions. Raj Kohl said, Jammu and Kashmir is the crown jewel of Mother India. I will say, Jammu and Kashmir is also the security blanket of India. We would have access to entire territory of Jammu and Kashmir. India will have land access to Afghanistan and Central Asia, which we don't have at this point in time. It's very, very important for us to move forward in the Union territories of Ladakh and Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir, normalize the situation, economically integrate with the rest of the India so that the people of these two territories prosper and we achieve our security objectives. We will be able to enhance India's security in longer term, prevent cross-border terror attacks by removing all the restrictions on Government of India, which Article 370 and Article 35A had put us on. So time to move on for larger security interests of India. That actually gives you the new map of political India, and you see here that you are having not only with Afghanistan but also with Tajikistan, so that land route needs to be established in Central Asia. Moving to the next slide, again highlighting the same. Over here, you see clearly Afghanistan, Tajikistan. This area is the Gilgit and Baltistan. People are talking about India committed a sin by revoking these, Article 370 and 35A. Some of these issues have been discussed. Interference with the legal status of Jammu and Kashmir, what Pakistan has done. Hasn't anybody talked about it? 47-48, Pakistan sent army rangers. In 1948, Pakistan failed to vacate its illegal occupation despite instructions by the United Nations Security Council. Never done, has not been done so far. Illegally ceded J&K land to China between 1961 and 1963. Illegally occupied Gilgit and Baltistan, which Singh has said, separated Gilgit and Baltistan from rest of their occupied Kashmir, and then merge them into a single administrative unit. If this was not an administrative or constitutional interference in the former princely state, what it was? That's the question I would like to ask. And the next question I would like to ask is China's interference in Jammu and Kashmir. Between 1950 and 1958, China illegally, surreptitiously, deceptively occupied Aksai Chin. China took illegal territory, illegally, from Pakistan in 61 to 63. At this point in time, there are 5,000 PLA troops in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. What is the legal basis of that? Pakistan is doing illegal construction activities in the territories of former princely state of Jammu and Kashmir under the garb of BRI, Border Road Initiative, One Belt, One Road project, and $64 billion CPAC initiative. So let's look at this. China occupies this. This is the territory ceded by Pakistan to China. And this is the, POK, and this is Gilgit and Baltistan. So these two nation states have been illegally interfering in sovereignty of an Indian state from 1947 onwards. Nobody raised a voice. So the point I'm raising is current batch of US politicians. Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Representative Brad Sherman. Where were you, sir and ma'am, when these illegal activities were happening? Why you have to have unilateral comments on India's activity? Why would you not denounce Pakistan and China? This is also compounded by the legacy of Cold War. In United States, we have the Cold War mindset of State Department mandarins. We still have Cold War mindset of the Fifth Estate. A lot of problem we have with the press is because of this Cold War mindset. What they do? They ignore the real stories about terror and genocide and cultural and ethnic cleansing. They will take one point, one case, repeat it ad nauseum, that there are terror attacks or there's violation of civil rights. Whether you look at Washington Post, whether you look at New York Times, whether you look at CNN, it's the same game. Washington Post had the guts to characterize and eulogize al-Baghdadi as austere Islamic scholar at the helm of ISIS. An international terrorist is being described like that, and that's the height of nonsense. Basically, they are using the tactics of Nazis, Goebbels. If you tell a big lie enough and keep telling it, people will come to believe it. And that is what Western media has been doing about Jammu and Kashmir. As I said, I'm looking at larger picture. What is happening in the region? United States is withdrawing from Afghanistan. Who's going to fill the vacuum? China. It's imperative for India to be strong, resilient, and rising to be able to balance a rising hegemon. If we have land access to Afghanistan and Central Asia through parts of Indian territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh now, Union territory of Ladakh, that is Gilgit and Baltistan, we should be able to counter the hegemonic influence of China in these regions. Singh has already described actually what are the issues going on with China. India has to exercise full control over the entire territory of the former princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, which Maharaja acceded to, period. No questions asked. India is going to do it, and you are going to witness it. We have already talked about this, so I'll go to the next slide. So what is happening by China in the neighborhood of Asia? Tiny countries, Sri Lanka, Maldives are in a debt trap. Billions of dollars have been loaned to them under OBOR. And the same thing is happening in Pakistan. The high compounded interest rates, no local involvement, outsourcing of equipment, labor, and everything from China benefits China. China is the new economic colonizer, let me make no mistakes. Be aware of that. Besides bringing out these things, China is bringing PLA troops. There are PLA troops not only in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. There are PLA troops in Balochistan. There are sailors. It's called PLAN, PLA Navy. Port of Gwadar at this point in time is a Chinese naval base. Let's be honest about it. Pakistan has become a de facto economic colony and a military base of China, and that is going to have impact and influence on geopolitics of Asia. People have talked about, jihadi terrorism. Everyone knows, so I'm not going to sort of elaborate on that. But what is interesting, that China is enabling Pakistan's cross-border terrorism and jihadi terrorism by protecting Pakistani jihadi assets, protecting them in UN Security Council, putting a hold on declaration as international terrorists on Pakistani terror assets, avoiding Pakistan being blacklisted by the FATF. Why? Because China does not want Pakistan to be defeated. Pakistan is China's monkey on India's back. That is what is happening. I'm going to be a little bit politically incorrect. You guys remember that? It's very politically incorrect to talk about clash of civilizations. But clash of civilizations is a reality. We may not talk about it. We can bury our heads in sand, but clash of civilizations is happening. And as Samuel Huntington proposed, China, the cynic civilization, is collaborating with jihadi actors in this larger clash of civilization, and we are at the receiving end. And when I say we, it's Indic civilization, and it is Western civilization. There's an unholy terror alliance going on between China and Pakistan. Well, Francis Fukuyama talked about end of history and the last man. That thesis was propounded after fall of Soviet Union. The expectation was that history has ended with fall of communism. Everybody is going to adhere to Western liberal democracy. Is that happening? No. History never ends. History is always being made. History is always being created. And history is being made. And there are new actors that are making the history. So the people who are making history are the Chinese at this point in time. China considers the Middle Kingdom as the center of universe. On the sides of Middle Kingdom are the tributary and vassal states. And outside their influence is all the barbarians. That's the Chinese mindset. It's not only with India China has problems. China had problems in South China Sea. They drew so-called 9-dash line, which I'm going to show you. They had problems with tiny Bhutan in Doklam Plateau. They are fighting with Philippines over the Scarborough Shoals. Essentially, China has emerged as a regional hegemon, and they are trying to control the trade routes and also military assets all over Asia. Road to a safe and stable Indo-Pacific goes through South China Sea, and India has always advocated for freedom of navigation in South China Sea. So this is the South China Sea, and you see the other littoral states and these Spratly Islands and Scarborough Shoal and Paracel Islands. These are all contested by China, whether they belong to anybody else's in exclusive economic zone. This is the so-called 9-dash line. It basically means 9 dashes. And by this 9 dashes line, China says that we own this part of the world. And this shows you the Scarborough Shoal, which China is having conflict with Philippines. I'll respect that. So we have this alliance of Pakistan and China that is trying to influence the geopolitics of Asia. And India has to be strong, smart. India is net security provider in Asia at this point in time. India protected Bhutan from Chinese aggression in Doklam. India has proposed billions of dollars of projects in Afghanistan, building the infrastructure, building civil society, building their parliament. And India has been resilient in fighting jihadi terrorism in that part of the world. I think time has come that the world, and especially West, the liberal democracies of the West, understand India's role as a pillar of strength in combating jihadi terrorism and economic colonization by a rising hegemon in Asia at this point in time. And in that process, I would submit that India and United States stand together. US is having a trade war with China as we speak. India is also having an undeclared trade war with China as we speak. Both of us are at receiving end. Both of us have billions of dollars of trade deficits. The modern warfare is economic warfare. It's not the traditional wars with weapons. And time has come that these two natural allies stand together, leave aside your nitpicking on minor internal issues of India, and move forward towards a larger, broader canvas, broader world picture where these two nations can stand together and make a difference. Thank you. So with that, we come to the last part of this symposium, that is question and answer, and the panel will be willing to take questions. My request is that you have question cards, write your questions and send to us. Okay, you can read the questions. Yeah.
Well, why don't you come?
You come here. You can come at the lectern.
So any panelist can answer this. One student is asking, as Indian American students, what can we do to help move this conversation in a positive direction through peaceful means in university settings, amongst peerest, family, etc.?
Being in a university and teaching at this time, I think I need to respond to it. But before I do that, I need to probably mention one thing that hasn't been mentioned, and that is that a few days ago in Washington, the Foreign Affairs Committee of the House met, and the topic was human rights in South Asia. In that meeting, from the Times of India, one of their assistant editors and person who has been a commentator for quite some time, Aarti Tikku Singh, she was trying to tell them that in Jammu and Kashmir, at the present time, the Indian government's action has been having a positive effect. And amazingly, in that meeting, almost all Congress people who spoke, and it was obviously Ilhan Omar and others, and they were very, very inimical to her ideas. The point that I want to make is that at the present time, there seems to be kind of a Hindu phobia. And students in the universities need to make sure that they have an opportunity to educate their own peers on what is happening in India. Problem simply is that Hindu nationalism, as this issue comes up, because of Hindu phobia and the prism through which the West has looked at nationalism. The Western look at nationalism is that nationalism is zero-sum game. Nationalism means that you are against everybody else who is not like you. Nationalism is what Hungary has done. Nationalism is what Austria is doing. Nationalism is what at the present time Poland is doing. And what they are doing is no immigrants, against Muslims, against everybody else, and they feel that Hindu nationalism is the same. And the prism is Western prism through which they look at nationalism. Hindu nationalism is not exclusive. Hindu nationalism is inclusive. That is the kind of thing where we, at the present time in universities, need to educate people. How can it be done? I think, again, creating awareness, but the difficulty is that there has been a steep learning curve. We haven't done that. I think Bhishamji said, Adityanji said, that we need to be more active and we need to be sure that our own voice is heard and that the message that we give is done articulately. Message that we give is not simply shouting, but reasoned. And I think that need is apparent at the present time. Hindu nationalism is not exclusive. Hindu phobia need not be here. Because what happens is that with that Hindu phobia, there will be Hindu hatred, there will be problems about Hindus in this country, and I think we need at the present time to be vigilant. I'm sorry I kept talking, so I'll stop here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Nandaji.
Few things.
Yeah.
I would suggest to all the students who have talked to us now, please, you are very smart people. I'm not that smart. I'm an old-timer. Then you can go to Google or wherever, read about CAIR. There's the organization which has been promoting and doing work for non-Indians, against India, or they are doing for the last, from 1994 onward. And you know what, Nandaji, let me tell you something. What their agenda is? Human rights. They are based on human rights. And they are talking about human rights. and unbelievable. And based upon that human rights agenda, they have collected a lot of money, a lot of information, a lot of other things, a lot of aggression against everybody else. So what I'm trying to say is one has to be careful. Now, can I speak one more line?
Yeah, okay.
My personal opinion is, what I'm saying is a little bit not very acceptable thing. You know why India has come up now? Why India has prestige in the world at this time? Why we are recognized all over the world? Now, respectfully, leave these people who are shouting up and down. Because we have a government, a majority, that's right, and we have a government which is for the first time said what India stands for, not what others says about India. They know the background of all the people who are running the government. You understand what I'm trying to say, okay? If you don't, I'm sorry. That's it.
Okay, I will, just for the time's sake, I got a couple of questions, and we have 15 minutes. So I think people who are watching from outside, they will be appreciative if we can answer all of their questions. So I will try to combine a couple of them, and I will avoid which has already been answered. So two questions, actually, they're kind of similar. One question is, Pakistan is not going to stop its cross-border terror export to J&K. How will India promote economic growth under such circumstances? That is one part. And second part is just the gist of the question is this, that what this esteemed panelists have done to spread the idea beyond the classroom settings and beyond such kind of seminars. Are there any special efforts have been made to educate the media, to educate people in general at large by this panel specifically?
Okay, I can answer that. One of the reasons why we founded Indo-American Kashmir Forum in 1992 was precisely for that reason. At that time, we were going around the country, various universities, and holding teach-ins about Kashmiri Pandits, okay? And we were actually, at that time, countering KAC, Kashmir American Council of Ghulam Nabi Fai, because there was no care at that time. And Ghulam Nabi Fai and I have debated several places on the PBS and other places during those times. And because their focus was denial, 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 that Kashmiri Pandits never left Kashmir. It's a propaganda. So we went out and we did a lot of teach-ins. We did a lot of symposiums. My suggestion is the university students should do the same thing about teach-ins. It forces you to do research, it forces you to learn, and then it forces you to learn how to speak, how to explain to other people, okay? And Kair has done a very good job on that thing, and we need to be doing the same thing.
Okay.
I'll just respond a bit to the first part about Pakistan's attitude on terrorism, infiltration, and consequent effects on the trade part of between India and Pakistan.
I will also just add one question that is for you, so you can answer both. And that question is to General Jaini specifically. Has Pakistan Army in theory accepted its defeat? So you can...
Okay, it will get related very easily. Let us face reality. History never ends. I agree with you, sir, in your slide. But you cannot wish away reality. And what is the reality? Since 47, Pakistan has been our enemy. Pakistan is our enemy today. And in all probability, all likelihood, all indicators, Pakistan will continue to be India's enemy. Reason: the center of power in Pakistan is not with the politician. The center of power with Pakistan, calling itself a democracy, is not with the people. The center of power in Pakistan lies with the Pakistan military. The military has its own interests, power and economic power. All economy in Pakistan is controlled by the military. The Fauji Foundation runs all transport, all vehicles, all the big, huge farms. They've got visa businesses with them. I mean, any number of businesses are being run. Land, 80% of the land is in charge of the senior army generals. When a Pakistan military general retires, hundreds of acres of land is given to him as a gratis. So therefore, if that is the reality, let us treat Pakistan like an enemy. No pichi-puchi should be done. And when you come down to trade, would you trade with an enemy? Let us cut this bullshit of most favored nation status and other things. What is this most favored nation status? Only 34 items are being exchanged. And we are sending them the thing, they are sending us. You know what is coming maximum from Pakistan to India? Hara dhania. Can't we grow hara dhania? What are we importing from them? Hing. If you go to Wagah border in Amritsar, and you can smell that hing right up 14 miles away at Amritsar. Go down fulls of hing. If we don't get that hing from Pakistan, the Pakistanis will die bloody eating that hing only. Okay. So let us stop this bullshit of economic trade. Let us cut out all economy distinct. Let them starve. Let them, as I said in my small presentation, implode. They will implode in their own weight.
Okay.
Part 2, has the Pakistani army accepted defeat? No. They have not accepted defeat. They will never accept defeat because they are the center of power in Pakistan. Pakistan army is the main enemy of India, and they will continue to be so. They will never accept defeat. Whatever is going on, whatever will happen, post-370, post-Kashmir, post-breakup into union territories, everything that will happen is on the behest of the Pakistani army. Even when the Prime Minister comes to United States, the script is given by the Pakistani army. What came out in the New York Times as an op-ed of Imran Khan was given by the Pakistani army. Therefore, the Pakistani army rules the roost. They will never accept defeat in Pakistan.
Okay, so I will...
I have just a quick one.
Yeah.
I think you need to understand the strategy of Pakistan army. They have 3 things that they fight for. They're not fighting for the country. They have Iman, faith and trust in Allah, Taqwa, the fear of Allah, and Jihad, fight for the lordship of Allah. They're fighting for Allah, not for Pakistan. The idea is Ghazwa-e-Hind. How are you going to take over India? It may take 1,000 years. Pakistan is never going to stop in that struggle. And that should be understood by each and every Indian. Read the fighting doctrine of Pakistan Army, then you will know.
Okay. I am going to intervene here and give this information to the students. I have been authorized by Ambassador Agnihotri to make this announcement that Friends of India Society International is planning to undertake a number of similar symposiums in various major United States cities, taking this message to people. This is not the end, this is the beginning. This is the first baby step.
I need very briefly to answer your question about Pakistan, continuing terrorism, and how India possibly can make sure that economy in Jammu and Kashmir, other places, is on the upswing. I think we need to understand that Pakistan is seen in the international arena as a pariah. We talked about FATF. At the present time, even China is not able to convince other countries to go ahead and look at Pakistan in a very benevolent fashion. So Pakistan itself at the present time is being seen by the international community as a country that ought to be carefully looked at, and I think Pakistan is feeling the pressure. International Monetary Fund has given them again billions. No more money is going to come. Economy is shattered. So I think Pakistan itself is going to be not able to continue all that. And I want to say a couple words about China. I think this is not the time to continue that, but I think China itself, because of its own economic downturn, China itself, because Belt Road Initiative at the present time, not simply in Ceylon, not simply in Maldives, not simply in one African country, but country after country after country had said that that kind of continuously, that that trap is not going to be useful. So they are cutting all those prior, many of those demands and many of those projects are being cut at the present time. So I think the point simply is that it's a mixed result on both Pakistan and China.
Okay, so
A quick one, a lighter side on the Pakistani economy. Pakistan has got 800,000 asses, donkeys. Now, they're mostly on the Kutch side, you know, the semi-desert side. And the donkey skin, what underlies the donkey skin is used for medicine, and the Chinese are very keen in making all that. So to save their economy, 50,000 donkeys from Pakistan are being exported to China only to save their economy.
So I think General Jaini, and I think to some extent Nandaji has told this was the question, so no need to answer. How does India counter China in both geographic and geopolitical encroachment? And looks like Nandaji has said that it's going to die by its own way the things are happening. And you want to add anything on?
No, I simply want to say that there are, at least at the present time, clear indications that Pakistan itself is going to feel a whole lot of pressure from the international community, not simply in the United Nations, but even in the Islamic State Conference, because that conference did not go along with Pakistan condemning India on 370. And India was invited. Pakistan did not even go and attend that meeting, objecting to India being treated so politely and India being treated so favorably by Islamic countries.
Okay, and then one question came from a student again, and I think we got the answer, but if there is new answer, please try to add it. Many of my friends have joined the Stand with Kashmir movement, UN Security Council Code Pink, due to heavy militarization of the region. What does Article 370 entail, and how constitutional is the Indian occupation in Kashmir?
I think that's an issue on which you have a separate symposium, because you can't really simply in a sentence answer it. I can do that, but I think that requires much longer.
There is no occupation as such of Kashmir. Kashmir is a part of India, has been part of India. It is a reorganization of Kashmir and Jammu and Ladakh. So therefore, the question of occupation doesn't arise. It is just a temporary phase to see that everything goes well. Okay?
Okay.
And it was temporary, and it's taken out appropriately under the Constitution.
There is one suggestion came from Dave from audience. And this is to all speakers. We all know that terrorism is propagated by Wahhabis from Saudi. Can this be combated by isolating Saudi diplomatically and economically?
Saudis are feeling also a great deal of pressure. Not that they have stopped that Wahhabi message, not that they have stopped putting money in madrasas and trying to have that kind of very exclusive and at the same time explosive ideas being sent all around the world, but I think they are feeling pressure as well.
The last aid of $2.5 billion, which the Saudi prince came when he visited Pakistan, which he made to Pakistan, that aid, he made it conditional. That aid was not just given to Pakistan because they know that Pakistan uses this for military purposes in Afghanistan and against India in J&K. So he made it conditional that this aid will be used for purposes A, B, and C. So Saudis are becoming cautious.
So I would just like to be respectful for the time. We are 7:05, the time which was declared. If everyone agrees, we can take one or two more questions. Otherwise, we can conclude it here. So we'll conclude it here. And then other questions are kind of answered. So I think that we were on time. Thank you.
I just wanted to make one suggestion for the students. I know that's an important question about what they can do. And I think it's important for the students to know their heritage, where they come from. And the media in India, or for that matter, media here in US, and we heard about New York Times and Washington Post and all that, they don't give you the real picture. know your heritage, talk to people, find out, do your research, and awaken people, make them understand the truth. It is important. Once we know the truth, then only we can take action. So that is an important suggestion for the students in universities. All the youth, I think we should focus on our youth and make them aware of our heritage. I think that's very important.
Thank you, Raj. With that, I invite Mr. Sudarshan Sathe, President of FICA, a strong business leader, and a community leader of Indian community, to extend his vote of thanks. Mr. Sathe.
Good evening. FICA is an apolitical organization, and I'm here in my personal, private capacity. First, thanks to each and every one of you who have given the beginning of the weekend in such inclement weather to come and attend this forum. A big thank you to Dr. Adityanji and the excellent panelists for giving us a lot of facts and knowledge. And what a jewel of Cleveland. I have been living in Cleveland for 20 years, and I never knew this building existed. It's a gorgeous building. In closing, I want to say that the narrative of the mainstream media is erroneous but settled. And the only way to counter that is more engagement. We have done a woefully inadequate job of engaging with politicians, engaging with the media. We have not had a meeting with Cleveland Plain Dealer, and that's something to do. What I like to say also is that all people of goodwill, it's not about Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, all people of goodwill in their bones know what you have told them. They may not know it with as many facts, with as many details, with as much erudition as all of you, but they know that what has happened in Kashmir via the Modi government is righting of a profound historical wrong. And it's important for us to communicate to the US congressman. It happens to be the Democratic side that needs to be educated. I had a meeting with the congressman, and I told Congresswoman, and I told her that the Indian Americans, by and large, tend to vote Democratic. But what Modi has done is not just popular. It would be a misunderstanding to think that Prime Minister Modi's move in Kashmir is popular because a flavor of ice cream can be popular. But it is a more of a moral issue that Indians believe that a moral wrong has been righted the right way, in the constitutional way. And to the extent that they promote this anti-India stance, it is creating a great sense of disquiet and dismay in the minds of natural democratic voters. And they should talk to Brad Sherman, who had this October 14th thing, and he did not give India any chance to explain. And please Google your congressman, Google Brad Sherman, call him, tell him that you are disturbed, you are upset with this one-sided narrative. And with that, we can close the evening. Thank you very much.
I just don't want to leave the opportunity to thank TV Asia, who are quietly recording the whole event, and that recording will be available to dispatch into media, social media, and other places. So everyone, whoever has missed it, then they will be able to view it. So thank you, TV Asia.
And I want to thank him for putting that thing together beautifully well. And of course, Nitinji, that was wonderful. Okay? Good timing.